Chapter 86. The Yin Field. Chapter 86. The Yin Field. The Yin Field was a place in the center of the Dead Swamp. The Dead Swamp was surrounded by countless swamps. The muddy sludge could be seen everywhere. There was almost not a single dry spot. However, the Yin Field at the middle of the Dead Swamp was an exception. Here, there were no swamps and no ooze. The ground was mostly flat, and although not especially dry, it was still not as humid as the outer area of the Dead Swamp. The Yin Field was an extraordinary place. The air above the field was covered with thick dark clouds all year around, such that not even the sun, moon, and the stars could be seen. Perhaps that was the reason why the Yin Qi in the Yin Field was especially heavy. Anyone who enters would feel very uncomfortable. The place didn't appear to be frigid, but the Yin energy all around made people chilled to their bones. One would feel as if they had entered a supernatural space, surrounded by evil spirits. It felt very creepy. When Serene just entered into the Yin Field, he frowned slightly. He took a deep breath and felt discomfort seep into his bones. Although it wasn't very chilly here, it still made people uncomfortable all over. Standing on the frigid earth, Serene gazed around and found some strange exotic plants growing. These plants were not very tall, the tallest being only 5 to 6 meters, but they all grew in the weirdest pattern. There were various plants with very pale flowers, absolutely lacking any variance in color. Especially with some plants, their flowers looked like ghastly faces, giving off an extremely terrifying feeling. Just standing in the middle of those bizarre plants made Serene feel uncomfortable. When he looked at those plants, he always felt like they were going to leap towards him and bite him. The Yin Qi here is heavy. The plants that grew from it are very strange. Some plants could even suck in the Yin Qi and the corpse energies, while some others would attack as soon as they smell the breath of a human and entangle onto that human until they die. Zhuaqi scowled as he looked at the different plants in the Yin Field and then continued, "Other than plants, you should also be careful of demon beasts. The demon beasts here especially hate strangers. If they see anyone coming, they will attack until you are dead. Usually when warriors go through the Dead Swamp, they would rather explore the outer perimeter than in here." Slither, slither, slither. Silvery white long snakes suddenly appeared from within the plants. These snakes were about 3 meters in length. Their heads were cone-shaped, and their tails kept making circular marks on the ground. Their soybean-sized eyes gave out a cold glare. Several dozens of snakes slithered out from the plants. They actually understood how to split up and came from all directions to surround Serene and the rest. Level 2 Demon Beast, Corpse Worm Snake. Zhuaqi sneered and suddenly stomped on the ground. Strange ripples spread from his foot. With him as the center, the ripples formed in ring shapes and attacked towards all directions. Pop, 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 pop. Pop, pop, pop. Wherever the ripples went, those dozens of level 2 corpse worm snakes exploded, sprinkling brown blood everywhere. "I hate snakes the most." Zhuaqi sneered, his face full of disgust. He turned back to Qi Xiao and said, "Before we come across the 9-headed sky snake, I'll take care of the obstacles on the way. I'll let this be the bargain in return for participating in the Gate of Heaven." Qi Xiao nodded and replied, "You know this place well, so you can take the lead." Zhuaqi didn't refuse and walked straight to the front of the group. Traces of strange green poisonous fog quietly spread out into the air. When the plants in the Yin Field sensed the poisonous fog from him, they all contracted, as if they were actually afraid. Many of the plants were originally 3 meters tall, but after Zhuaqi walked past, they shrunk to only 1 meter, clearly a whole lot smaller. Serene was amazed. He watched with glinting eyes. Whenever he walked past those plants, he would carefully observe them. He realized that wherever Zhuaqi went, the plants were very docile and submissive. However, if he didn't follow behind Zhuaqi and chose to walk a few meters in another direction, those same species of plants would actually open themselves up and try to entangle him, looking as if they wouldn't give up till he was strangled to death. "Kid, if you don't want to die, you better follow me." Zhuaqi suddenly turned his head and glared at Serene. In his mouth he was quietly muttering, "I don't understand all of you. You knew that you were gonna enter the Yin Field, but still brought 2 burdens along. Do they want to sacrifice them later at a key moment? The burdened Zhuaqi was muttering about were obviously Shuryen and Zhuoshi. They both were only at the human realm, the ones with the lowest strength. Shuryen looked indifferent. He was unmoved by Zhuaqi's whispers. But Zhuoshi was not happy. She pouted and said, "What are you muttering about, big earthworm? Who are you calling burdens?" "Humph. If you don't want to come along with us, then you can leave right now. It's not like we can't live without you." "Girl, who are you calling earthworm?" Zhuaqi's dark green scale-covered face slightly shook for a second. He murderously glared at Zhuoshi. "Say that again." "All right." Qi Xiao furrowed his brows and scolded Zhuoshi. "Zhuaqi is an elder. Don't be so disrespectful. We wouldn't have been traveling so smoothly this whole way if it weren't for Zhuaqi." Qi Xiao then looked at Zhuaqi and said, "Why can't you stop being so foul-mouthed? If it weren't for your stupid foul mouth back in the day, I wouldn't have tried to fight to the death with you. Why are you doing it again?" Zhuaqi snorted and fiercely glared at Zhuoshi, the scales on his face shaking again, but he stopped mumbling. Zhuoshi, however, wanted to keep throwing a few more insults at him, but was stopped by Qi Zhao's glare. She pouted her lips and stopped talking. Xia Xianyan and the two giant men were on the left side of Qi Xiao and the rest of the group. She didn't talk. Her expression was indifferent. She ignored Zhuaqi, but didn't have the intention to talk to Qi Xiao either. However, occasionally her eyes would drift towards Shuryen. The expression in her eyes was quite complicated, and no one could figure out what she was really thinking. Since the day they came out from the swamp, she didn't speak a word to Shuryen. Shuryen was also sensible. He didn't make a move to get close to her either. This atmosphere between her and Shuryen made Qi Xiao, Zhuoshi, and the rest dumbfounded. But everyone pretended they didn't realize, and nobody went to annoy and ask the two about it. "Just come on and follow me. If you want to live, you all better know your place." Zhuaqi snorted and purposely looked towards Shuryen. Shuryen looked calm. He didn't bother with Zhuaqi. Just at this moment, Qi Xiao suddenly furrowed his brows, and a hint of confusion flashed in his eyes. "What happened?" Xia Xianyan's expression moved. She keenly sensed Qi Zhao's abnormality. "Nothing." Qi Xiao shook his head and said calmly, "I just suddenly sensed something strange, but it was gone in a flash. I wonder if I'm just being delusional." After saying that, everyone got a little nervous. Zhuaqi said, "Could it be that Sky Realm Master?" "I don't know." Qi Xiao shook his head again. Qi Zhao's reaction cast a dark shadow over everyone's minds and made everyone more cautious. In the Yin Field, where there was dense foliage filled with plants, a pale and tall middle-aged scholar silently stood there. By his side were 35 warriors with the same pale face and blank expression. One of the young men was only in his early 20s. With long hair to his waist, he appeared very handsome, but had a kind of evil temperament. "Master, what have you found?" the young man asked curiously. "The objective should have entered into the Yin Field, and I just used my soul power to probe a little." "Another soul power immediately sensed me," that pale middle-aged scholar said. "Is it someone from the Baiming family?" "No, Baiming Shang got here a long time ago. Why hasn't he come to find us yet?" "The objective is already here. Baiming Shang would come very soon." One day later, in the area where that group of people had gathered, Baiming Shang arrived there alone, cold energy writhing around his body. Lord of the Dark World. After Baiming Shang arrived, he put together his fists for that middle-aged scholar and said, "How may I address you?" "Zhou Zihe." The Lord of the Dark World looked calm. "I've long heard the name of the head of the Baiming family. Now that I've met you today, you seem to deserve your reputation." Baiming Shang stretched his lips and said emotionlessly, "Brother Zhou, you should be one with the most widespread reputation. The Dark World has been dominant in the Fire Empire, and from that we can see that Brother Zhou is truly a great talent in the world. Working with Brother Zhou this time, hopefully everyone will be satisfied in the end." "Where's that girl from the Mu family?" The Lord of the Dark World furrowed his brows. "After exploring the Gate of Heaven, I will bring her to you myself." Baiming Shang glanced at everyone from the Dark World and said, "Brother Zhou, Why have you brought so many? Aren't you scared of being discovered? We, the people from the dark world, are good at hiding our trails. This you don't have to worry about, Brother Baiming. All right then. Baiming Sheng nodded, then continued. The other side has appeared. Their target should be the Yin Valley in the Yin Field. If any mishaps really happen at that time, I wish Brother Zhou would come out. But I don't want you to identify yourself too soon, or else Mu Yi Dai's resentment will grow. She is merely a bereaved little girl. Do you really need to care, Brother Baiming? I don't really care about Mu Yi Dai, but there's another girl by her side. The martial spirit that girl possesses could be of use to my Baiming family. I don't want that girl to know that we gave Mu Yi Dai to you, or else it would affect my plans in the future. Sure, the reason I didn't bring my mask this time is to cooperate with you. I stand as the Lord of the Dark World, and I hardly show my true self to others. That Mu girl has never seen me. She will never know who I am. You can be reassured on this matter, Brother Baiming. Good, then we will meet again at the Yin Valley. By that time I will use my soul power to send messages to you. I hope you won't disappoint me, Brother Zhou. Then Baiming Sheng slowly retreated. His body faded into a wisp of cold energy and dissipated into the air. Master, Baiming Sheng is cunning in his schemes. This exploration of the gate of heaven, we should be careful of him. He's definitely not the good kind. Don't worry, your mistress is here in the dark. If any great treasures really appear, they will surely belong to the dark world. Mistress is here too? The demonic handsome young man exclaimed. Yes, she arrived at the Yin Valley a long time ago. With her attainments in concealment, no one in the Yin Field can ever detect her unless she shows herself. Then this exploration of the gate of heaven is in the bag. Chapter 87, Black Formula. Chapter 87, Black Formula. Following Zhuoqi and the others, Shi Yan headed for the Yin Valley without stopping. Zhuoqi proved his value along the way by removing those odd plants and brutal demon beasts. Zhuoqi turned out to be the co-master of the Dead Swamp, for he even knew this area, the Yin Field, far better than Qi Xiao. All along the way, Zhuoqi removed all the obstacles easily. In doing so, Qi Xiao and Xia Xinyan could save their energy for the fight with the nine-headed sky snake. The nearer they got to the Yin Valley, the more they could feel the Yin Qi. Gradually, Shi Yan could feel his profound Qi flowing slower and slower. His ribs and bones were experiencing immense pressure from the Yin Qi. So did Zhuoshi. The nearer they came to the Yin Valley, the more pale her face became. Apparently, she wasn't able to adapt to the atmosphere there either. Let's have a rest here, Zhuoqi, Monsieur. We need to study the treasure map as well. Qi Xiao was being considerate of his students, so he stopped at one clean and flat area and took out the treasure map to study with Zhuoqi and Xia Xinyan. Zhuoqi didn't want to stop, but since Qi Xiao took out the map, he agreed with him instantly. He walked up to Qi Xiao quickly and giggled. I'm very familiar with the Yin Valley. Let me see the map and I can find the position of the Gate of Heaven. Xia Xinyan hesitated and she too walked up. Qi Xiao had learned the map by heart, so he handed the map to Xia Xinyan and let her watch Zhuoqi, while he himself walked towards Zhuoshi and Shi Yan. How do you two feel? Can you endure it? Qi Xiao looked to Zhuoshi. Zhuoshi's pretty face had turned pale. Yes, I can endure it, but it's too uncomfortable. The Yin Qi has slowed my profound Qi and seems to be consuming it as well. The nearer we get to the Yin Valley, the faster it is consumed. That's natural. Qi Xiao nodded and explained. The heavy Yin Qi would affect your body, so your profound Qi would try to adapt to it. Thus it gets consumed. You two pay attention to it. It's just the beginning. The Yin Qi will be denser in the valley, so if you two can't bear it you will have to stop before you enter it. Teacher, this seems to be able to remove some Yin Qi, Zhuoshi suddenly said. Qi Xiao was surprised, finding it funny and annoying. Then why didn't you train it long ago? I just realized it. Zhuoshi protruded her tongue and grinned naughtily. Fine. I will train with it diligently from now on. I found that once I operate the Yin Qi can't enter my body. If you were hardworking long time ago, you might have finished training me already. Qi Xiao shook his head with regret and resignation. Stop it. It's not too late to start now. Zhuo pouted with a grunt. Qi Xiao sighed in his mind and turned to Shi Yan. How do you feel? I'm fine. I'm okay with it. Shi Yan replied calmly. Well, do your best. Qi Xiao nodded. You should stop when you can't bear it. Then Han Feng will stay and protect you, while Kulong will enter the Yin Valley with us. We only need to find out what's inside the Gate of Heaven this time, then your Shi family will send more experts here. So don't worry too much if you can't enter the gate. Shi Yan nodded, not saying anything more. Qi Xiao comforted him and requested Zhuo to work hard, then walked back to Zhuo Qi and Xia Xianyan. Young master, the family had told us that it's most important that you are safe. Don't push yourself if you can't bear it. The family had said that we just need to find out the exact position of the gate and what's inside it. Kulong said in a low voice beside him. I got it. Shi Yan looked indifferent, but his brows were furrowed. A short distance away, Zhuo Qi, Xia Xianyan, and Qi Xiao were still studying the treasure map. Although Zhuo Qi regarded himself as a know-it-all when it came to the Yin Valley, he couldn't figure out anything when he saw the map, as seen from his confused expression when whispering with Qi Xiao. Shi Yan glanced over them and sat down where he was, when a thought came across in his mind. He was curious about the Gate of Heaven, and he wanted to go inside of it too. However, the Yin Qi here was really tough as it was omnipresent. At the same time, it was becoming more dense, which was affecting his body a lot. Before they got to the Yin Valley, he had to consume his profound qi to defend from its influence. He couldn't imagine how powerful the Yin Qi would be in the valley. By then, his profound qi would be totally consumed, and it would be very dangerous if anything came up. I must find a way to defend against the Yin Qi. After a short deliberation, Shi Yan's expression was determined. He sat cross-legged and tried to search in his memories. An idea flashed across his mind. His face lit up. He picked up his bag and took out a book on the mortal-level martial skill. It was only an elementary-level martial skill, which needed to collect Yin Qi while training. It was best to train with it where there was dense Yin Qi. Since he took the from Karu, he had given up training it as it was only a mortal-level martial skill and required a Yin Qi-filled environment. After he got to the Shi family and witnessed so many martial skills, he had forgotten about them. Therefore, that book was buried in oblivion in that bag. The Yin Field here was heavy with Yin Qi. It was the best place to train in them. Although there was only a mortal-level martial skill, since it required Yin Qi, once one was adapted to the environment, he could gather the Yin Qi and use it as a weapon. Shi Yan didn't care much about its power for as far as he was concerned. It was just a mortal-level martial skill, which had limited power. Nonetheless, the could absorb Yin Qi and help him adapt to it, which solved his problem for now. Therefore, he picked up that formula right away. While Qi Xiao, Zhuo Qi, and Xia Xianyan were busy figuring out the position of the Gate of Heaven, Shi Yan devoted himself to its practice process. Sitting on the ground, Shi Yan flipped open the book of the with a solemn face. Before long, he had read through the first volume and secretly put the book into his bag with his brows furrowed. Although there was merely a mortal-level martial skill, it appeared to be strange. To train with it, one must trigger the Yin Qi between the heaven and earth and form 3 Yin swirls around the 3 meridians in one's chest, Tian Ke, Shin Ke, and Yin Du. As long as the swirls are formed, one can trigger and absorb the Yin Qi around them easily. Once the 3 swirls absorbed enough Yin Qi, they would produce 3 Yin pearls, which would go down the 3 meridians. And after that, the Yin swirls could continue absorbing Yin Qi endlessly. As long as there was enough Yin Qi, the Yin swirls would produce more Yin pearls and submerge into the meridians. The more Yin pearls in the meridians, the more powerful they would be. The one who trained with could collect Yin Qi by merely triggering and absorbing it into the 3 Yin swirls. Although there was merely a mortal-level martial skill, no one knew how much Yin Qi it could absorb. It seemed that the 3 Yin swirls would devour Yin Qi ceaselessly once there was enough Yin Qi. Shi Yan had seen many martial skills in the martial spirit palace of the Shi family, but he had never seen anything as strange as this one. There was an end goal to train to with every martial skill, but the could be trained endlessly. Sitting on the ground with a rigid face, Shi sorted through the practice process he understood in order to train with and he found it literally extraordinary. However, he didn't hesitate at all. To enter the center of the Yin Valley, he memorized the practice process several times and began to train with it, while Qi Xiao and Zhua Qi were still whispering. Shi connected his eyes, nose and heart, operated his will to Tian Ke, Shin Ke, and Yin Du meridians and concentrated Yin Qi into them. During that process, his body was still under pressure, as his hadn't adapted to the Yin Qi yet. Gradually, the Yin Qi began to circle around the 3 meridians according to Shi will. He found that his body was having a strange attraction to Yin Qi as he began to operate the. While he was refining his Yin swirls, the Yin Qi around him began to gather and poured into his pores. At last, it arrived at the 3 meridians and started to spin slowly. Chapter 88. Strange Scene. Chapter 88. Strange Scene. 8 days later, outside the Yin Valley. We won't enter the Yin Valley today. Everybody have a good rest. We will enter the valley tomorrow morning. Zhua Qi stopped at the entrance of the Yin Valley and said with a gloomy expression, "The 9-headed sky snake will notice us once we enter the Yin Valley. A fierce battle is unavoidable." Qi Xiao took out the map again and waved at Zhua Qi and Xia Xinyan. "Let's take this last night to study it again. It's best if we could find out the accurate position of the Gate of Heaven." Zhua Qi and Xia Xinyan walked up frowning and looked down at the map. As usual, Shi found a quiet place far away from those 3 people, sat down, and began to train with them. Every night during the past 8 days, Qi Xiao would ask the group to stop and have a good rest, in order to provide Zhuo plenty of time to train with them. Shi wasn't idle either. As soon as the group stopped, he would find a quiet place and train with them under the protection of Han Feng and Ku Long. After 8 days' practice, he had accumulated lots of Yin Qi in the 3 meridians in his chest. He operated the Yin Qi every day according to his will and divided it into several wisps to spin around the meridians. As the Yin Qi accumulated, it spun faster and faster and was about to form into real Yin swirls. After taking a deep breath and holding it, Shi began to concentrate on controlling the Yin Qi. Wisps of Yin Qi began to intertwine at the 3 meridians in his chest, and, under his control, was quickly forming into circles. Every time he reached the state, he would reach out to sense the Yin Qi in his surroundings. It was as if the Yin Qi was gathering around him under some magical force. After 8 days training in the, Shi started getting hang of controlling the Yin Qi. At the same time, after several days of revolution in the front of his chest, the Yin Qi in his body seemed to have changed slightly. The Yin Qi had become denser since they arrived at the entrance of the Yin Valley. However, Shi found it quite comfortable thanks to the 8 days of training. Moreover, the nearer he approached the Yin Valley, the easier he was able to train them. It was even rather refreshing to breathe the Yin Qi. Han Feng and Ku Long didn't exactly know what martial skill Shi was training in, but they were still protecting him diligently. Time flew by. All of a sudden, Zhuo, who was guarded by Wu Yunlian and Chu Ping, jumped up joyfully with an odd light sparkling around her body. She shouted, "Huh! It's the 3rd sky of the human realm." Qi Xiao, who was focusing on the treasure map, rushed over in ecstasy, and as he grabbed Zhuo's hand and began to test her, his old face showing satisfaction, "You little girl, you are." From the joyful reaction of Zhuo's profound Qi Xiao could tell that she had reached the 3rd sky of the human realm. Zhuo hadn't fully understood the after 8 days of training, but she turned out to have reached the 3rd sky of the human realm. For such talent there were not enough words for Qi Xiao to say anything. The only word he could come up with was genius. During their journey from the Cloud Mountain to Tianyun City, apart from fooling around, Zhuo hadn't trained hard for even a single day. It was out of his expectation that she entered that level so fast. "Mr. Qi Xiao, you've got a really great student." Surprise also crossed Xia Xinyan's eyes, as she too was shocked by Zhuo's talent. "Hee, this girl is really talented, though she is too lazy." Qi Xiao was delightful as he patted Zhuoshir's shoulder. Work harder. Digest these as soon as possible. You little girl, you could have reached a much higher realm had you focused on practice. Then he walked to Xia Xinyan and Zhua Qi's side and said with a smile, leave that girl alone. Let's study the map. Another 2 hours passed. As Shi Yan was sitting there silently, suddenly his body shook heavily and then kept quivering slightly. More and more yin qi concentrated and combined in front of his chest as it spun faster and faster. Looking inside, he found the profound qi around his 3 meridians becoming stronger and spinning faster. The profound qi that he had absorbed rushed into the 3 meridians and then was refined and resolved into more gray strings. More and more gray strings gathered in the swirls inside the meridians, making the swirls spin faster and faster. Not knowing how much time had passed, a gloomy air was suddenly forced out from the swirls, which shocked Shi Yan. More and more yin qi gathered from all directions and gushed into his pores, heading for the centers of the 3 swirls, while they were spinning faster and faster. Looking inside, Shi Yan was shocked to find that the 3 swirls had formed a shadow, and that shadow was emitting a strong attraction force. He had succeeded. The strong attraction force meant that a yin swirl had officially formed. Thus, the power of the yin swirl to devour yin qi was triggered. All of a sudden, the yin qi inside the yin field seemed to find an exit and flooded towards Shi Yan. 10 meters above Shi Yan's head, 3 odd swirls, as big as a human head, gradually appeared. Those swirls were similar to the yin swirls inside Shi Yan and were apparently influenced by the yin swirls in his chest. They spun in line with his yin swirls and were attracting more yin qi to his location. Huge amounts of yin qi gushed into the 3 head-sized swirls above him, which were expanding quickly. In merely 10 minutes, those swirls had swollen to the size of a wash basin and kept devouring yin qi from all directions. Qi Xiao, Zhua Qi, and Xia Xinyan all stopped their discussion about the map and stood up, shocked by what they saw. The 3 swirls were still expanding. 1 hour later, the 3 swirls were like a tornado, extremely frightening. The swirls kept spinning crazily as they tried to devour all the yin qi in the Yin Valley. With a rigid face, Shi Yan sat there without moving, continuously operating the swirls inside him, seemingly not knowing about the phenomenon above his head. He could clearly feel that the 3 swirls in his chest had accelerated several times. Even his mind found it hard to catch up with the spinning. Han Feng and Ku Long were taken aback as they watched the strange scene without any idea as to what was occurring. The dense gray yin qi had hovered in the Yin Field for thousands of years, isolating it from the sky, blocking both sunlight and moonlight. However, today, the yin qi between the sky and the Yin Field all went crazy as it endlessly gushed into the swirls above Shi Yan. Not knowing when, the 3 swirls above his head had turned as huge as 3 mountains, filled with odd light. They looked like 3 huge mouths, ready to swallow all the yin qi between heaven and earth. This is... One huge man beside Xia Xinyan cried suddenly, remembering something. What? Xia Xinyan's eyes sparkled, and she turned to watch that huge man. Under Xia Xinyan's gaze, that huge man hesitated, and then walked away quietly. Zhua Qi and Qi Zhao's expression changed as they watched the strange scene with incredible eyes. Noticing that the huge man had some new findings, they walked towards them. Xia Xinyan frowned, walked away with the huge man and let him explain, keeping a distance from Zhua Qi and Qi Xiao. You sure? Xia Xinyan's voice was filled with uncertainty. That huge man kept nodding his head, showing lots of anxiety. Then he looked at Shi Yan in fear. I'm very sure it must be. Xia Xinyan's face turned pale. She nodded and shouted to Qi Xiao and Zhua Qi, get ready for the fight. The 9-headed sky snake will come out soon. It needs yin qi to train with, so it will chase us at all expense. We don't need to enter the Yin Valley now. Miss Xia, our young master, what the hell happened to him? Ku Long was rather anxious. Ask him when he wakes up. Xia Xinyan frowned with bright light in her eyes, but don't worry. That strange phenomenon will not affect him. On the contrary, it is an opportunity. He will suck the yin qi in the Yin Field clean if not disturbed. What? Qi Xiao, Zhua Qi, Wu Yunlian, and Zhua Shi all screamed in astonishment, with unbelievable faces. Yeah, this martial skill is this powerful. I don't know how he gained it. Xia Xinyan's expression was complex. The nine-headed sky snake will come soon, as it won't allow anyone to devour the Yin Qi. Maybe we don't even need to wait till tomorrow to fight it. Howl, howl, howl. From the Yin Valley, crazy hollows came with extraordinary rage. Bang, bang, bang. Bang, bang, bang. Massive booms suddenly came from within the Yin Valley. Everybody shook with the earth, and they could feel that a huge monster was approaching them quickly. There it is. Zhua Qi screamed. Chapter 89. Forming the Yin Pearls. Chapter 89. Forming the Yin Pearls. Sponsored by A. Al-Sadi, T. Li and N. Markandai. The three swirls were floating above Shurian's head like giant clouds. Sparks flew inside the swirls, and wisps of cold Yin Qi were repeatedly refined in the swirls, forming strange gray light spots. The air above the Yin Field was filled with natural Yin Qi and had remained as such for a long time. But the huge attraction from the three swirls was showing a pattern of rapid consumption, swallowing it to the last. Shurian's expression was serious, as if he had entered some enigmatic realm. The swirls above his head suddenly emitted some gray light spots, all of which entered Shurian's body. Because of that, Shurian's body started forming a vacuum which was felt by everyone present. His body was now like a black hole, sucking in all the gray light spots that came down from above. The gray light spots flickered and jumped and entered into Shurian's body. Shurian was now covered in a gray glow, and a chilling atmosphere spread out from him in all directions. Whoever got near Shurian couldn't help but feel stiff. The circulation of their profound qi would slow down, and they would have to use their qi for defense, or else they would be affected by the dense Yin Qi. It was like Shurian had transformed into a giant Yin Qi swallowing monster. Shurian was sitting as still as a stone while the three swirls floating above his head were wildly swallowing and transforming the Yin Qi in the Yin Valley. He was continuously refining the Yin Qi, transforming it into purest form of Yin energy, which was in turn nurturing his cultivation. In Shurian's chest, the three meridians of Tian-Ke, Shin-Ke, and Yin-Du started rapidly gathering the gray light spots that had rushed into his body. These gray light spots all represented the purest form of profound Yin Qi. Huge amounts of light spots all entered the Yin swirls and were refined to the purest degree. This refined energy then started gathering at the center of the Yin swirls. Unknowingly, in the center of the three Yin swirls, there were three rice grain-sized pearls slowly starting to form. Once he detected the formation of the Yin pearls, Shurian's expression shook. He discreetly started to detect his surroundings. When he realized there was nothing abnormal, he went back and continued circulating the Yin swirls, ready to keep absorbing more of the natural Yin Qi. You don't need to stop. Xia Xinyan stood by Shurian's side. Her beautiful eyes glinted. I know what you're doing, and I know you can hear me too. The nine-headed sky snake will get here really soon, but we'll take care of that. You can keep swallowing the natural Yin Qi here. Indeed, Shurian could hear Xia Xinyan's voice, but he couldn't reply to her. Miss Xia, if Shurian doesn't stop here, the nine-headed sky snake will attack him first. Ku Long said hurriedly. Zhua Qi and Qi Xiao also looked at Xia Xinyan with a bit of surprise, not knowing what she meant by her proposal. The nine-headed sky snake has 9 heads, 3 of which can breathe fire, 3 can spit poison, and the remaining 3 can control the Yin Qi in the Yin Field to attack differently. Xia Xinyan's pretty eyes glinted, and she explained in seriousness, the 3 heads that can control the natural Yin Qi are very troublesome, and they will be hard for us to take care of. But now we have an advantage. If Shurian keeps sucking in the natural Yin Qi like this, that means once the nine-headed sky snake gets here, the Yin Qi attack will be swallowed by the swirls above Shurian's head. This way, 3 of the 9 heads will be greatly weakened. Upon hearing that, Zhua Qi and Qi Zhao's eyes both glinted. Together they nodded and approved. Not bad. Once those 3 heads become powerless, the 9-headed sky snake will be a lot easier to deal with. Zhua Qi is not scared of the venom, and you also brought the silver curtain. So now we only need to put our efforts into the 3 fire-breathing heads. Because of Shi Yan, this fight is going to be a lot easier for us. Xia Xian Yan said calmly. Zhua Qi and Qi Xiao nodded quietly. They both agreed upon Xia Xian Yan's suggestion. Would my young master be okay? Han Feng suddenly opened his eyes and coldly stared at Xia Xian Yan. Although we are very interested in the gate of heaven, the young master's life is more important. He's only bait, he can just keep up what he's doing now. Xia Xian Yan frowned and continued. If he wants to wake up, he could do so anytime. But he will need a whole lot more time to try to gather the Yin Qi like this another time. Boom, boom, boom. The thundering roar was getting closer. The earth was shaking, and in the distance, a faint but frightening figure slowly started to appear. Get ready to fight, Qi Xiao shouted. At another entrance of the Yin Field, Bai Mingsheng's expression shook slightly. He looked far away into the distance at the smoke-like swirls that rose into the air. His cold eyes flashed with a trace of confusion. Grandpa, have they started fighting? Bai Mingsu asked. Shaking his head, Bai Mingsheng said, No, it's just that the natural Yin Qi has become abnormal. It is all gathering towards where Qi Xiao and his group are at. The 9-headed sky snake is out of the Yin Valley and is rushing towards them. I wonder what is going on over there. When should we get there? Let's wait. Wait until the fighting is almost over. On another side, the people from the dark world were gazing at the 3 floating swirls where Shi Yan was. They were also full of surprise and didn't know what was going on. Master? It's like the natural Yin Qi has changed and is all gathering towards that one spot? Could it be that the 9-headed sky snake has already started to attack? The demonic young man guessed. The 9-headed sky snake is able to use the natural Yin Qi to cultivate, but it shouldn't be this overbearing. To make all of that natural Yin Qi flow towards one spot, I think even the 9-headed sky snake would be unable to make such a grand gesture. Besides, the change is from outside the Yin Valley. It's obviously done by Qi Zhao's group. The Lord of the Dark World said with a deep tone. Should we go and see it? No, we will wait for Bai Mingsheng's news. If Bai Mingsheng doesn't give out the signal, we will stay put for now. Your mistress should already be there, so if the gate of heaven really appears, your mistress will send out a signal. We don't need to be in such a hurry. Understood. The 3 Yin pearls were slowly forming. With more natural Yin Qi flowing in, the 3 Yin pearls grew brighter and brighter. The Yin pearls were in the middle of the Yin swirls outside of Shi Yan's meridians. They were rolling in the air, and whenever a wisp of gray Yin Qi came in, the Yin pearls would immediately absorb the gray light spots. Only when the Yin pearls were truly formed would they finally sink into the 3 meridians by themselves. Shi Yan knew this deep in his heart. So when he clearly heard Xia Xian Yan's words and knew that Han Feng and Ku Long were very worried about him, he still didn't stop the movement of the Yin swirls. He had a hunch that the Yin pearls were at their crucial moment, and perhaps they will soon be truly formed successfully and then enter into his meridians. When the 3 swirls showed up above his head, he was shocked too. When the 3 swirls started insanely swallowing the natural Yin Qi, Shi Yan was finally sure that that was only ranked as a mortal-level martial skill, was not something ordinary. What kind of mortal-level martial skill could cause such a big disturbance? He really couldn't think of any. Roar! 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 Terrifying roaring sounds thundered from the distance and filled the whole Yin Field. The 9-headed sky snake was a demon beast which was at the pinnacle of level 7. Legend has it that it was an ancient mutant, a hybrid born from a dragon and a python. It has the ability to keep evolving, so when the 9-headed sky snake has swallowed enough Yin Qi, poisonous air, and fire, it could evolve again and become a level 8 or level 9 demon beast. The reason why this 9-headed sky snake decided to take over the Yin Field was because it had seen that this place was rich in Yin Qi, and the outer perimeter of the dead swamp was covered by poisonous fog. It wanted to occupy this place so that it could use the poisonous air and the Yin Qi present for cultivation. Soon a mountain-like figure, the sky snake with 9 giant heads, finally came out of the Yin Valley. The 9-headed sky snake had a body like a mountain, covered with silver scales and sharp spines. All 9 of its heads were about 20-something meters long. Each head was like a giant python and had creepy white fangs. Each head was breathing out either poisonous fog, yin qi, or flames. Attack! Once Zhuaqi saw it, his face hardened and he charged ahead of others. Earth dragons abruptly broke out of the ground. Zhuaqi's body flickered and he possessed one of the Earth Dragon's bodies. When Zhuaqi possessed the Earth Dragon, its body covered itself in hard earth armor. The dragon head faintly looked like Zhuaqi's face, and its body grew twice the size. Zhuaqi was born from a level 8 mud dragon and a human female warrior. The mud dragon was originally the true master of the Dead Swamp and was able to transform into human shape. It was also once the strongest demon beast in this area. Legend has it that back then, the mud dragon was the king of the demon beasts here, and not a single warrior could offend his prestige. The mud dragon was a level 8 demon beast, comparable to a spirit realm warrior. But 1,000 years ago it suddenly died in the Dead Swamp. It was a baffling death. Many years after its death, the 9-headed snake finally appeared in the Dead Swamp and drove Zhuaqi to the outer perimeter of the Dead Swamp. It forcibly occupied the Yin Valley to cultivate, which is why Zhuaqi has so much hatred for it. When Zhuaqi possessed the Earth Dragon and charged at the 9-headed sky snake, Qi Xiao quietly told about the grudge between Zhuaqi and the 9-headed sky snake. Level 8 Demon Beast. Xia Xinyan's expression also shifted slightly. No wonder Zhuaqi can control the poisonous mist and also freely travel through the mud. So he's a hybrid between a mud dragon and a human. If he didn't know how to control the poisonous mist and the mud, he would have been killed by the 9-headed snake a long time ago. At the outer perimeter of the Dead Swamp, as long as Zhuaqi could hide in the swamps, nobody can do anything to him. That's the reason why it's so tough to handle Zhuaqi. You too. Can you start fighting now? On the other side, Zhuaqi was in the form of an earth dragon, and he yelled from inside the flames that were breathed out by the 9-headed snake. He sounded a little urgent. Chapter 90. The Sky Changes. Chapter 90. The Sky Changes. Outside the Yin Valley, thunderous roars rang out endlessly, and huge amounts of power was surging and propagating across the sky like lightning. Qi Xiao, Xia Xinyan, and Zhuaqi all leapt into the air. They were all facing the 9-headed sky snake with all their strength. Qi Xiao had turned into a giant and was wielding the silver curtain to guard against the venom while he held a giant sword in one hand. He was single-handedly facing the 3 fire-breathing heads of the 9-headed sky snake. Zhuaqi had possessed an earth dragon and was veering around the 3 venomous heads of the 9-headed sky snake. The sky snake seemed to know that its venom was ineffective against Zhuaqi, so it opened its enormous mouth and bit down on Zhuaqi's possessed earth dragon. Xia Xinyan was faring the best of the 3. She floated in the air like a goddess, forming strange seals with her hands. Huge claws would momentarily appear in the air, which would ruthlessly attack the rest of the heads of the 9-headed sky snake. These 3 heads of the sky snake could control the natural yin qi, but whenever it breathed out the yin qi, they would be immediately absorbed by the 3 hovering swirls above Shiyan's head. After a few futile attempts, the sky snake became furious. It moved toward Shiyan and repeatedly tried to clash with him. It was determined to kill Shiyan first. Han Feng and Ku Long were observing everything gravely. Though being uneasy, they stood beside Shiyan and were constantly on guard. Zhou Shi, Wu Yunlian, and Chu Ping soon arrived at that stop. Now all the members from the Shi family and Zhou family had gathered together, and other than Shiyan, all were watching the fight between the 9-headed sky snake and the 3 masters. Shiyan was sitting still as a stone, his eyes closed and expression indifferent. However, he could clearly feel the striking waves of devastating power. The fight among the Sky Realm Masters destroyed all the vegetation around the Yin Valley. In one place, a deep crack had formed on the ground during the battle. Even Shiyan, who was sitting with eyes closed, could feel the terrifying impacts. However, he still didn't stop the Yin swirls from taking in the natural Yin qi. In his chest, the Yin swirls finally turned into Yin pearls. They emitted a dark glow and contained overwhelming yin qi. These pearls slowly sunk into the 3 meridians of Shinkei, Tianke, and Indu. Once the 3 Yin pearls sunk into his meridians, Shiyan's body trembled. Checking inside his body, Shiyan realized that when the Yin pearls entered in the meridians, the negative energies already present in the meridians all rushed towards the Yin pearls, as if it was assimilating into the Yin pearls. Shiyan was startled. He hurriedly concentrated his all in observing his 3 meridians. He suddenly remembered that all his meridians had some amount of negative energy. He really didn't expect that these negative energies would conflict with the emerging Yin pearls. Inside the 3 meridians, wisps of negative energy formed into ribbon-like shapes and slowly gathered together. Once the 3 Yin pearls entered his meridians, the negative energies immediately intertwined with them, as if they were actually trying to break down the Yin pearls. However, the Yin pearls had condensed massive amounts of natural Yin qi and had formed after continuous and repeated refinement. Although the negative energies in his meridians were domineeringly wicked, they still lacked in quantity. Over the course of these days, Shiyan had indeed absorbed a lot of negative energy, but the negative energies were spread throughout the meridians in his body. There were 720 meridians in total in his body, and of course the negative energy distributed to these 3 meridians was limited. However, it was as if the Yin pearls knew the lethality of the negative energy and were determined to defend against it. It was like the Yin pearls were going all out till the end. Soon the negative energy and the Yin pearls in his body stopped blindly battling each other. With more and more Yin qi pouring into the Yin swirls, 3 more new Yin pearls started forming in the center of the Yin swirls. This way, the previous 3 Yin pearls that had already sunk into his meridians gained strong support. The Yin pearls slowly gained dominance within Shiyan's meridians. On the contrary, it was those domineering negative energies that had to shrink back into the corner of his meridians and stop causing trouble. They couldn't gain support. Over Shiyan's head, the 3 mountainous Yin swirls continued to rapidly absorb the natural Yin qi. The Yin field that never sees the light all year round was suddenly struck with its first beam of sunlight. Under the crazy suction of the 3 mountainous swirls above Shiyan's head, the Yin qi that had gathered for thousands of years and covered the air in the Yin field was on the verge of being totally dried up. The cold and gloomy Yin field slowly became warmer because of the influx of sunlight. More sunlight shone from above, and the beams of sunlight shot onto the plants and demon beasts in the Yin field. The strange bizarre plants soon became limp and shriveled up under the blazing sun. Many demon beasts were roaring in madness. They sprinted out of the Yin field and unwittingly rushed towards the outer perimeter of the dead swamp. "Hey!" Zhuo exclaimed, "These plants and demon beasts are scared of sunlight." The plants in the Yin field grow from the natural Yin qi. They've already adapted to the environment here. But now that the natural Yin qi is gone, these plants that have never been in contact with sunlight can't tolerate it. They are all going to wither and die. Wu Yunlian explained. "What about the demon beasts?" "They're the same. The demon beasts that live here cultivate by absorbing the Yin qi. There is a heavy amount of Yin qi in their bodies. They naturally like the cool shade. So once they realized that sunlight has appeared, they could only sprint away to escape into the swamps in the outer areas. At least there are poisonous fogs and the shade of old trees to cover them. It's better than being completely exposed to the sun like this." "Does that mean the 9-headed sky snake is affected too?" "Indeed." Wu Yunlian was dazed for a second, and she gazed at the 9-headed sky snake. Sure enough, under the blazing sun, the 3 heads of the 9-headed sky snake that breathed Yin qi seemed to be getting weaker. Under Xia Xinyan's attacks with the giant hands, those 3 heads could only dodge, possessing no power to fight back. The 2 tall buff men who were worriedly watching Xia Xinyan at this moment finally breathed out in relief. One of them looked back and gazed afar at Shiyan. He frowned and quietly said, "Thanks to that guy. If it weren't for him absorbing all that natural Yin qi like this and exposing sunlight in the Yin field, the 9-headed sky snake would really be hard to handle. It surprised me that the wood spread to here. I wonder where he got such a thing." Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. The 9-headed snake stumbled along the way and suddenly sprinted towards the Yin Valley. The sun had appeared and the nine-headed sky snake's body was heavily damaged. It actually started thinking about running for its life. "Chase it!" Zhuaqi cried out. He ran ahead first, staring at the nine-headed sky snake, and pursued it vigorously. Qi Xiao and Xia Xanyan exchanged eye contact. They both knew that the gate of heaven was in the Yin Valley. If they gave the nine-headed sky snake enough time to rest, it would become more troublesome later on. Instead, they might as well destroy it as soon as possible. So, Qi Xiao and Xia Xanyan also followed. Thundering roars kept coming from inside the Yin Valley. Qi Xiao and the rest should still be batting the nine-headed sky snake in the valley. Outside the valley, the three giant swirls above Shi Yan's head slowly disappeared. All the natural yin qi that filled the enormous yin field had been emptied. In Shi Yan's chest, 3 new yin pairs were successfully formed, and together they sank into his meridians. Feeling that the yin swirls had stopped whirling and not a single trace of yin qi was flowing into his body, he finally woke up. Shi Yan opened his eyes and stood up. He looked around at the surprised Han Feng, Wu Yunlian, and the rest, then said, "Let's go look in the Yin Valley. It sounds like the nine-headed sky snake is almost finished." As expected, when everyone listened, they realized that the stirring in the Yin Valley had started to die out. "Young master, how are you doing?" Ku Long couldn't help but ask. "I'm all right. I was cultivating a new skill. I just didn't expect the skill to be so strange." Shi Yan furrowed his brows. He suddenly thought of something and tried to circulate the 3 yin swirls at his chest. Wisps of strange yin power suddenly flowed out from the 3 meridians of Shinkei, Tiankei, and Yin-Du. The yin power poured into the yin swirls, and the yin swirls began to quickly whirl, releasing traces of pure yin power. Yin power was different than profound qi, but it went along his arm and flowed out. In his palm, a chilling glow shone, and a dark green light ball slowly covered his whole hand. As his yin power stirred, the light ball became bigger and bigger, and eventually it became a head-sized green light ball. Lightly taking a breath in, Shi Yan's reversed the action. That green light ball started shrinking again, and all the yin power returned through its original course and returned to the yin swirls, and was again absorbed by the 6 yin pearls in his meridians. The yin pearls were the source of power of the. They released power through the yin swirls and then flew out of his meridians to attack. Secretly feeling around for a moment, Shi Yan soon realized the way to use the. It's not the same as swallowing an yin qi, but the other way around. "Baiming Sheng, what are you doing here?" Right at this moment, from the Yin Valley there suddenly came Qi Zhao's surprised shout. Everyone outside the valley suddenly felt something amiss. "Quickly, let's go and see." Wu Yunlian notified the rest and hurriedly rushed towards the direction of the Yin Valley. Shi Yan, Han Feng, and Ku Long couldn't treat this lightly either, so together they quickly sprinted out and ran towards the Yin Valley with great speed. Dash. Chapter 91. Dividing the Plunder. Chapter 91. Dividing the Plunder. In the Yin Valley. As Shi Yan had absorbed all the yin qi between the heaven and earth, there was no yin qi left in the Yin Valley. The dazzling sunlight fell in the valley. The massive body of the 9-headed sky snake fell at the center of the Yin Valley with blood dripping from wounds all over its body. Under the attacks of Qi Xiao, Zhuaqi, and Xia Xanyan, and without any yin qi, the 9-headed sky snake finally died under the sun. However, apart from Qi Xiao, Zhuaqi, and Xia Xanyan, there were other people who had also entered the Yin Valley. The group including Shi Yan and Zhuo Shi had also arrived in the valley by then. As soon as Shi Yan saw the scene in the valley, his face turned gloomy. Baiming Su and Baiming Shang were standing there. Yin Kuei and Jiao Shan were naturally standing by Baiming Su. Mu Yudai and Di Yalan were excited to see the 9-headed sky snake lying in its own in blood. Beside the experts of the Baiming family, stood Zhou Zihe and a strange young man. All the people in the valley were focusing their eyes on the 9-headed sky snake in the center. Qi Xiao and Zhuaqi appeared tired, with sweat all over their bodies. Xia Xanyan looked pale. Although she had taken a sky pill, her energy had not fully recovered. The three had tried everything and used up all their energy in killing the nine-headed sky snake, only to find that Bai Mingsheng and another sky realm expert had appeared in the Yin Valley secretly. It was easy to understand their frustration. After Shi Yan entered the valley, he stood beside Han Feng and Ku Long, calmly gazing at Muyu Dai and Di Yalan, who were quite excited. Everyone can have the treasure from the nine-headed sky snake carcass. This sky snake has 9 demon crystals. How about we divide it among ourselves? Bai Mingsheng frowned and said calmly, "You three really suffered a lot, so I won't ask for much. I only need 2 demon crystals out of 9. One of the fire element and the other of Yin Qi. Why on earth should you have a share?" Zhuo Qi's face was twisted as he demanded with a hideous expression, "All the demon crystals of the nine-headed sky snake belong to us. We brought out our all to kill the snake, and now you want us to share the booty with you? Why should we?" "Why?" Bai Mingsheng said coldly, "Because we are here. I want to cut also." The Dark Master of the Dark World said peacefully as he pointed to one of the snake heads which could emit Yin Qi, "The demon crystal in that head is mine. The rest are all yours." Hehe. Zhuo Qi showed a grim smile. "You have to first make sure you are capable of getting it. Capable or not, you must know it better than me." The Dark Master looked at Zhuo Qi and said peacefully, "We tested each other at the perimeter of the dead swamp, and you killed several of my people. However, that was in the outer area where you could use the swamp and poisonous air as your shield. What about here?" "Brother Zhou." Bai Mingsheng looked to the Dark Master and grinned. There seemed to be 3 sky realm warriors, but that's not the exact situation. "Really? Miss Xiao's martial spirit is marvelous, but she is a mere disaster realm 3rd sky warrior." Bai Mingsheng pointed to Xia Xianyan. "She won't recover in a short time since she has used her martial spirit. We don't need to worry about her." Xia Xianyan's face turned pale after she heard that. Zhuo Qi's expression was also changed, and he couldn't help but look to her. "Is that so?" As far as he was concerned, although he and Qi Xiao had consumed much energy, they could still make them give up the demon crystals as long as they received Xia Xianyan's help. However, if Xia Xianyan was only at the 3rd sky of the disaster realm, then they would definitely lose. Under Zhuo Qi's gaze, Xia Xianyan nodded in resignation. "Bai Mingsheng, why on earth are you here?" Qi Xia had some other concerns. He thought for a while and asked, "What do you think?" Bai Mingsheng asked with a grin, "I got it." Qi Xiao sighed and nodded. "You have come for the gate of heaven, haven't you? It seems you never let go of the treasure map. Our sources in the Tianyun city are far greater than you can imagine. Nothing would go unnoticed if I care to know." Bai Mingsheng walked over slowly to one of the snake heads and continued calmly, "Let's divide the demon crystals first, then we will have a discussion about the gate of heaven." Under the watchful eyes of the people present, Bai Mingsheng took out a demon crystal and said, "I want this one." The Dark Master from the Dark World didn't move, and he demanded casually, "Mu Hui, get the demon crystals." That exotic young man nodded with a smile and walked to the 2 snake heads, without minding Qi Xiao and the rest, knowing they dare not fight. Zhuo Qi was in a rage, with his face as red as a tomato, but he stood there and clenched his teeth. "I will remember you too." Bai Mingsheng and Dark Master didn't respond. Zhuo Qi gouged the remaining 5 demon crystals. Qi Xiao sighed with resignation. Zhuo Qi also went up to the snake body. While searching for the demon crystal in the snake heads, Zhuo Qi seemed to try to release his indignation by acting in a rough manner, as blood and flesh flew out from those snake heads. Shi Yan was observing them coldly. Bai Mingsheng and Zhou Zi, he apparently had planned all this and were waiting for the best opportunity. Bai Mingsheng showed up while Qi Xiao and his friends were about to kill the snake and took advantage of Xia Xianyan using her reincarnation martial spirit to ask for a share of the plunder. That was really malicious. He conserved his energy by not doing anything, and by forcing Qi Xiao and the other 2 to consume their energy, he shared the plunder. Once the gate of heaven was opened, he would get more chances to gain treasures than them with his energy at its peak. Shi Yan took a deep breath and calmed himself down. He didn't say anything but observed the new groups while they were dividing the plunder. Before long, the plunder was divided. Of the 9 demon crystals, the Biming family got a fire crystal and a Yin Qi one, while Zhou he got the other 2 Yin Qi demon crystals. Of the remaining 5, Zhua Qi got 2 poisonous ones, and Qi Xiao got another poisonous crystal and a fire elementary one. Xia Xin Yan also received a fire elementary one. The 9 demon crystals were thus divided among the experts present. Later, the tusks, skin, and saliva from the snake was also harvested by the group. Since there were several Sky Realm warriors, those rare materials like tusks were soon collected and divided. This time, the Shi family got 5 poisonous tusks, a piece of skin from the back of the snake, and 3 bottles of poison. This demon crystal of fire element is beneficial to your martial spirit. Biming Shang threw his hand casually and a demon crystal flew slowly to Di Yalan. Di Yalan was rather surprised as she looked at Biming Shang with uncertainty and asked excitedly, Biming family head, you mean this demon crystal is for me? The fire element demon crystal was indeed beneficial to Di Yalan's blue magic flame, and it was from a level 7 demon beast, which was very rare to her. Biming Shang nodded with a beaming smile. Come, train hard with the help of this demon crystal. I won't treat you unfairly as long as you are in my family. Di Yalan was hesitant as she thought that the demon crystal was too precious. She was too shy to take the crystal, which was floating before her eyes. Here you are, Sister Lan. Put it away. Just then, Muyudai grabbed the demon crystal and handed it to Di Yalan. Thank you, Biming family head. As soon as she touched the crystal, she could feel the strong flame power emitting from it. Di Yalan didn't hesitate anymore and paid her gratitude to Biming Shang quickly. We are family. You don't need to say that. Biming Shang said indifferently. Di Yalan was a little panicked as she understood the overtone of Biming Shang. But still, she lowered her head and pretended she didn't get what he meant, holding the demon crystal tight. She couldn't resist the temptation of the demon crystal. Shuryen saw the whole thing, but he kept silent with a rigid face. Chapter 92. The Gate of Heaven Appears. Chapter 92. The Gate of Heaven Appears. Can we talk about the treasure map now? After the various masters divided all the valuable items on the 9-headed sky snake, the lord of the dark world, Zhou he suddenly spoke. The sky was slowly getting dark and soon night fell. In the valley, everyone was frowning. Not a single person seemed relaxed. Biming Shang and Zhou he both looked at Qi Xiao. Mr. Qi Xiao, you wouldn't refuse to allow us to participate, right? Biming Shang said casually. Qi Xiao's expression changed. He was standing there and thinking deeply. He glanced first at Xia Xin Yan, then at Zhua Qi, and felt a bit hesitant. Xia Xin Yan was slowly recovering after taking a nutrition pill, but she was still far away from being completely recovered. At this moment, the opposite side had 2 Sky Realm warriors. However, with Qi Xiao and Zhua Qi only at 80% strength, it was predetermined that they would be at a disadvantage. Let's take it out and have a look together. We haven't been able to find the gate of heaven anyway. Xia Xin Yan said in an indifferent and relaxed manner. Miss Xia Xin Yan knows about onset and retreat. Truly you are someone who can achieve great things. Biming Shang nodded and then told Xia Xin Yan with a straight face, Miss Xia, the Biming family has only come for the treasure map. We don't want to make enemies with the Misty Pavilion. After this, no matter what the outcome, the Biming family will never bother the Misty Pavilion even a bit. Xia Xin Yan was from the Endless Sea, and with just being at the 3rd sky of the Disaster Realm, she could utilize her martial spirit to immediately reach the Sky Realm. This little girl was already this powerful. How powerful would her background would be? Biming Shang held a lot of fear towards warriors from the Endless Sea. If not as a last resort, he didn't want to have a hostile relationship with Xia Xin Yan. I also came for the treasure map. Not a single trace of emotion could be seen on Xia Xin Yan's eyes as she spoke. After the business with the treasure map is finished, we will return to the Endless Sea. As long as the Misty Pavilion is not provoked, we from the Endless Sea wouldn't bother to come to such a remote area. That would be for the best. Biming Shang said. I'll warn you beforehand though, Even if there may be incredible treasure in the gate of heaven, it will also be infested with unimaginable dangers. Xia Xian hesitated for a moment, then said, "There hasn't been an appearance of the gate of heaven in your area, so your understanding of the gate is only limited to rumors. You may be aware of only one side of the coin and not the other. Any further details would be appreciated." Whether it be Bai Mingsheng or Zhou Zihe from the dark world, they both zoned out for a second, then looked at Xia Xian with serious expressions. Indeed, in the God-blessed Empire, the Fire Empire, and the Merchant Union, the legend of the Gate of Heaven had spread. However, there had never been an appearance of the Gate of Heaven in these three nations, which is why when this treasure map appeared, it attracted the attention of so many forces. Qi Xiao, Zhua Qi, and Han Feng also expectantly looked at Xia Xian. They were also full of curiosity about the secrets to the Gate of Heaven. In the Endless Sea, not only does the Gate of Heaven exist, but there's more than one. But every gate of heaven bears the greatest dangers. Xia Xian took a deep breath. There was a rare seriousness in her expression. She said with a deep voice, "The gate of heaven leads to the God domain." The God domain contains unimaginable mysteries, but every God domain is also extremely frightening. Usually when a warrior enters, there's a very low chance of coming back alive. Whether it be the fourth demon area, the sevenfold underworld, or the abyss battlefield, none of them could be entered by ordinary people. Fourth demon area, sevenfold underworld, abyss battlefield. Coming from Xia Xian's mouth, the names related to the Gate of Heaven and the God domain of the Endless Sea made everyone present in the valley astonished. They secretly felt stunned. "I came this time only to see what mysterious God domain this Gate of Heaven leads to. Unknown domains could lead to terrifying and mysterious places that may devour everything. You better get prepared beforehand." Xia Xian looked around and said coldly, "Inside the God domains that have appeared in the Endless Sea, there were powerful beings that were as powerful as the spirit realm. And there were more than one of them. If there are such beings in this God domain too, and you all want to rashly break in, don't expect to come out alive." Xia Xian's words raised a storm of shock in everyone's minds. Whether it be Bai Mingsheng, Zhou Zihe, Qi Xiao, or Zhua Qi, they were all suddenly stunned, their expressions aghast. Spirit realm beings? And more than one. What kind of concept was this? If the God domain accessed from this Gate of Heaven also has a being of this level, who in this whole valley can say that they will get out alive? The entire valley was silent. "What, are you all afraid?" Xia Xian sneered. "No matter what, I still have to go in and take a look." Zhou Zihe's lips were a bit dry, but after a long silence, he then said, "Or else, how would we know what's inside? Miss Xia is only at the third sky of the disaster realm and still dares to come. What are we afraid of?" When Zhou Zihe put it that way, everyone finally realized. Xia Xian came this time obviously because she wanted to enter the God domain too. She knew the dangers of the God domain, but still dared to come. Was it that she really came to die? Thinking this way, everyone all felt that Xia Xian was only scaring them. Maybe the God domain wasn't even that dangerous. "I have said what needed to be said. You guys can figure it out yourselves." Xia Xian nodded at Qi Xiao. "You can take out the treasure map now." Qi Xiao knew that it would be hard to avoid Bai Mingsheng and Zhou Zihe, so with frustration, he could only take the treasure map out from his chest pocket. Bai Mingsheng and Zhou Zihe hurriedly moved closer and gathered around the treasure map to examine it. The treasure map only marked one point in the Yin Valley, which is pointing to this place here, but there's nothing there. Zhua Qi scowled and said coldly, "I've gone around many times in the valley before and even used my soul perception to scan the movements underground. But there's nothing at all. Is this treasure map fake?" "Can't be fake," Xia Xian said with certainty, but she did not explain. Everyone knew that she came from the Endless Sea and her understanding of the Gate of Heaven and the God domain was above their own. Upon hearing her say that, everyone immediately stopped worrying, and they all stared intensely at that treasure map. Each one was in deep thoughts and paced around in the Yin Valley, as if trying to figure out the location of the Gate of Heaven. Shi Yan was standing with Han Feng and Ku Long. He didn't get mixed into the business. He just coldly observed these people's reactions and occasionally glanced at Mu Dai and Di Yalan. Mu Dai and Bai Mingsi stood together. Sometimes they would both chat and laugh quietly about something, and sometimes Mu Dai would simply press her lips and smile. Di Yalan was still drowning in happiness, her hands tightly gripping the fire demon crystal and her face full of excitement. The look on her face was clearly showing her impatience to start absorbing the energy in the demon crystal then and there, so that she could nourish her martial spirit right away. Time passed quickly. All the Sky Realm Masters in the valley looked worried. They frowned and pondered about the secrets of the treasure map, but no one could figure out the location of the Gate of Heaven. Soon, the day passed and it was nighttime. Twinkling bright stars appeared in the darkness. Slowly, more stars appeared in the night sky. And finally, an array of stars filled the entire night sky. Suddenly, the treasure map clutched in Zhuaqi's hand started to light up. Everyone's faces changed, and their eyes immediately went to the treasure map. The treasure map escaped Zhuaqi's hold. It slowly rose in the sky, higher and higher, and very soon it was floating in the sky above the Yin Valley. A mass of strange power suddenly rippled from inside the treasure map. The light of the stars seemed to have been drawn in by the power of the map. Like raindrops, the bright starlight suddenly poured down from the sky and onto the treasure map. Boom! The treasure map suddenly blew to pieces and a fist-sized clear demon crystal abruptly appeared out of thin air. A strange power filled the whole Yin Valley, and the demon crystal gleamed with light, clear and bright as a quartz. Inside the demon crystal was a sluggish-looking little person. His body glowed with light, and his expression extremely miserable. "Father!" Zhuaqi suddenly screamed. He unbelievably looked at the little person inside the demon crystal and roared, "Father! I am Zhuaqi! Father!" The demon crystal of the level 8 mud dragon. Qi Shao also exclaimed, his expression in awe. In the valley, one by one the warriors raised their heads to look up at the sky. They all looked appalled, not knowing what happened. The little person inside the demon crystal didn't seem to hear Zhuaqi's voice. It stayed in the demon crystal looking dazed. The level 8 demon crystal became brighter and brighter, and a strange mass of power suddenly rippled out from it. "Ah!" Di Yalan exclaimed, and sweetly shouted, "My demon crystal." The 9-headed sky snake demon crystal that was tightly clenched in her hand suddenly flew up and rose to the sky. At the same time, the 8 newly acquired demon crystals held by Bai Mingsheng, Zhou Zihe, Qi Shao, Zhuaqi, and Xia Xinyan all escaped from their grasp. One by one they soared into the sky, revolving around the level 8 demon crystal that contained the spirit of the mud dragon. Colorful strange lights shone from the 10 demon crystals in the sky and brightened the whole Yin Valley. In the valley, the snake blood that bled from the 9-headed sky snake moved as if it was alive, forming into a river of blood that flowed inside the valley. The bloody river was like a mysterious paintbrush. With its metallic odor, the blood separated into different flows, and like a blood snake, it swiftly moved across the ground of the valley. Soon, with the blood of the 9-headed sky snake as the catalyst, a strange pattern drawn by blood magically appeared on the ground. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. Boom. The 10 demon crystals in the sky exploded together, forming into 10 beams of light, and suddenly drew into the strange pattern on the ground. The galaxy-like strange pattern abruptly flashed strange lights. The starlight from the night sky came down from the sky and also infused into the pattern. In the middle of the great galaxy-like pattern, strange lights quickly gathered together. Thousands of light spots condensed together and slowly formed into a blindingly bright door of light. The Gate of Heaven had appeared. Chapter 93, The God Search Skill. Chapter 93, The God Search Skill. Tianyan City. That night, black spots appeared in the sky above the city. Those black spots, as seen under the moonlight, gathered together and flew in the direction of the misty pavilion. Many skilled warriors looked up, only to find that these black dots were in actual some strange demon beasts. 50-odd black spots gradually flew toward the misty pavilion like a dark shadow. As soon as these black spots landed, many sharp-eyed warriors found them to be 50 black bats, which were about 7 to 8 meters long with a completely dark body and long tusks. They looked as if they were creatures from hell. Each bat was emitting a black aura which felt gloomy and frightening. Seated on each of those huge bats was a warrior, his face rigid, stance like a reaper, emitting a bloody aura, as if one's life was totally in his control. At the front of the group was a huge bat on which was sitting a scar-faced, middle-aged man. His scars were very hideous. The scars on his face were like earthworms extending from his face down his neck, looking as if there was a veil on his actual face. He was emitting a deep and bloody aura. Whoever approached him would want to throw up from the suffocating smell. 51 green-blooded magical bats landed before the Misty Pavilion. The master of the Misty Pavilion, Ku Luo, had waited for a long time with his people. As soon as he saw the guests, he kneeled down on one knee and greeted them respectfully. "Lord Xiao, this is Ku Luo from the Misty Pavilion." Xiao Han Yi, who got down from the huge bat at the front, walked over at a leisurely pace. The people from the Misty Pavilion all turned pale and averted their eyes as he approached and could barely control their desire to vomit. One after another, these Shura escorts from the Yang family of the Endless Sea dismounted from their rides and followed after Xiao Han Yi to enter the Misty Pavilion. All the bats remained in the square outside the Misty Pavilion, watching the many kneeling warriors expectantly with their cold green eyes, treating them as if they were fresh meat. Being stared at in such a manner by the bats, the warriors of the Misty Pavilion were completely horrified and panicked a lot. Xiao Han Yi sat on the head seat casually and glanced at Ku Luo. "What's the situation?" Miss Xia went to the dead swamp, since the gate of heaven was found there. The treasure map was completed. Ku Luo was anxious. "I'm not asking about that." Xiao Han Yi's face turned cold. An invisible power exploded outwards within the pavilion suddenly. That power constricted Ku Luo as if there was a big hand on his neck and lifted him to drop him in front of Xiao Han Yi. "Father, Lord." Ku Luo's family members all were horrified and looked at Xiao Han Yi in anger, ready to fight for their lives. Some of the Shura escorts coldly glanced at them indifferently when one of them asked, "Lord, do you need to finish Ku Luo's family?" "Lord Xiao." Ku Luo struggled, coughed, and begged in fear, "Lord Xiao, we've tried our best. Give me some more time, we will find Yang Hai. Keep your eyes open." Xiao Han Yi stared at Ku Luo and grunted. Bang! Ku Luo fell from midair and dropped to his knees on the ground. He nodded in fear and explained, "We took every man named Yang Hai to the Tianyin city, but none of them was the one we want. We are searching out of town now and will get news soon. Give me the blood spirit crystal." Xiao Han Yi thought for a while and stretched out his hand. The blood spirit crystal left by Xia Xin Yen on Ku Luo suddenly flew out from him and landed in Xiao Han Yi's hand. "Everybody except Ku Luo, get out." After getting the blood spirit crystal, Xiao Han Yi ordered calmly. "All dismissed." Ku Luo signaled to his people. Soon, there were only Xiao Han Yi's people left in the room. "I don't have so much time." Xiao Han Yi grunted and said indifferently, "It turns out that the Xia family is really slow. So much time for a single person." Then, Xiao Han Yi caressed the blood spirit crystal and closed his eyes. Centered on Xiao Han Yi, a strong will pervaded throughout Tianyin City in all directions. Inside that blood spirit crystal, a red light suddenly manifested and numerous faces, filled with all sorts of expressions, appeared on the surface of the crystal. Their faces flashed like ghosts inside the blood spirit crystal, and none of them stayed for more than 3 seconds. The God Search skill. Ku Luo was shocked. The God Search skill was a mysterious tracing skill. Once one had the target's blood, flesh, bone, or even a hair, he could find the target with this skill. The better one can use his will, the larger the search area it could search. Xiao Han Yi closed his eyes, and his huge willpower covered the entirety of Tianyin City. In Tianyin City, All the Nirvana warriors who had formed a will see could feel clearly a horrifying will see lingering above Tianyun City. Many experts in Tianyun City were astounded. This will was more than 2 levels higher than Baimingshang's, covering the entire Tianyun City and kept moving further. At that time, all the experts in the 5 big families felt threatened. At this crucial point, every minister of the 5 families exchanged messages and started guessing what the Misty Pavilion was going to do. The God Search skill was continuing. The horrifying will see shook the whole Tianyun City like tornado, where every creature was tested. All of a sudden, blood exploded in the blood spirit crystal and odd light spots gathered, showing a fat face in it. The picture in the blood spirit crystal turned clear. That guy was sitting in a carriage in the west of Tianyun City, heading for the city. Xiao Han suddenly opened his eyes. Who is he? Shi Jian's adopted son, Yang Hai. Ku Luo's face changed in astonishment. It is him. Xiao Han quickly stood up and vanished. The next moment, the sound of green blood magical bats filling the sky came from the Misty Pavilion. 1 hour later, Xiao Han brought Yang Hai back, who had a blank expression on his face. Who are you? Humph. Has the Mo family invited you here? Yang Hai was kind of calm, but when he saw Ku Luo, he shouted in anger, Ku Luo. Has your Misty Pavilion cooperated with the Mo family? What's going on? We 3 families worked together to search for the treasure. What the hell do you want to do? Ku Luo smiled bitterly and made an apologizing bow, saying in embarrassment, different things. Different. It's good to see you, young Master Hai. I'm the leading Shura escort from the Yang family, Xiao Han. Xiao Han bowed. I will explain everything to you. Xiao Han explained the story to Yang Hai politely. Young Master Hai, our family head is battling in the 4th demon area now, so I came to take you back. Since the family head threw you out of the 4th demon area, he has been worried about you. But he was badly injured and had to recover first. The Endless Sea? The Yang family? Yang Hai was shocked, confused, and unable to think straight. Standing there, his expression continuously changed as different ideas popped up to his mind. Just then, he remembered that test Shi Yan did on him in the gravity room. His arm was cut, but quickly recovered in presence of Han Feng, which showed it was an amazing martial spirit. Hearing Xiao Han say such, he was sure that he meant it. However, he was used to living in the merchant union and Shi Jian was good to him. Besides, his son Shi Yan was here, and he was not a warrior himself. With all sorts of matters behind him, Yang Hai was so pressured that he didn't want to start a new life in the Endless Sea. After a long time, Yang Hai shook his head. I'm not going to the Endless Sea. I never trained in martial arts. It's too late to begin training at this age. I'm used to the life here and don't want to live in the Endless Sea. I'm afraid you have to leave without me. Just think I'm dead. Young Master Hai, Xiao Han yelled. As a descendant of the Yang family, you have to fight for the family. After a pause, Xiao Han added, although young Master Hai is not young anymore, don't worry, the family head had expected it. He had long prepared an immortal pill, and this royal level pill will change you entirely. It will be easy for you to enter the disaster realm in 10 years. Immortal pill. Ku Luo cried out loud and tried to persuade Yang Hai, young Master Hai. The immortal pill is one of the 7 magical medicines in the Endless Sea. One immortal pill can really change everything. Even your talent will change with it. Young Master Hai, seize this opportunity. Royal level pills. Though the 3 medicine kings in the Medicine Valley were soul-level alchemists, they couldn't ever refine royal-level pills. Till now, royal-level pills had never appeared in the Fire Empire, God-blessed Empire, or the Merchant Union. It was said that one royal-level pill could change everything. Xiao Han and Ku Luo's speech made Yang Hai rethink. His expressions changed in front of the temptation of the pill. I never trained martial arts since I was a kid, so I can't adapt even if I became a warrior right now. After a long silence, Yang Hai looked at Xiao Han and said, my heart has died since my wife's death. I have no dream anymore. However, my son is in his prime age and possesses both the immortal martial spirit and the Shi family's petrification martial spirit. Although he hadn't trained in the first 17 years of his life, he advanced to the third sky of the nascent realm. Maybe you could give the immortal pill to him. Sure Yen. Ku Luo cried out and said to Xiao Hanyi, Lord Xiao, Sure Yen is awesome. Young, with potential, ambitious, and strong-minded. 17. Twin martial spirits in the third sky of nascent realm. Xiao Hanyi mumbled to himself while his eyes lit up. Where is he? In the Yin Valley of the Dead Swamp. Ku Luo ingratiated. Young Master Hai, I will go see Sure Yen first. Excuse me. Xiao Hanyi bowed to Yang Hai and disappeared in an instant, with his voice ringing outside the misty pavilion. Let's go to the Dead Swamp. Chapter 94. I'll go. Chapter 94. I'll go. Inside the Yin Valley. An enormous galaxy pattern emerged from the blood of the sky snake. In the middle of that galaxy pattern, thousands of lights gathered, forming into the blindingly bright gate of heaven. All the warriors gathered in the valley were looking at the gate of heaven, but none of them dared to enter first. On the other hand, Sure Yen was quite calmly standing beside Han Feng and Ku Long. He was secretly observing the gate of heaven, feeling joyful inside. He didn't get any of the 9 demon crystals that came from the carcass of the 9-headed sky snake. But seeing all those crystals getting destroyed made him immensely happy. But as he thought of the frightening power which could snatch away the demon crystals from the hands of sky realm warriors like Qi Xiao and Bai Mingshang, he was very startled and thought of prudence. Zhuaqi looked up into the sky. His expression was painful, and he kept murmuring under his breath, Father, Father. One of the demon crystals that exploded came from a level 8 mud dragon. A level 8 demon crystal could sustain a piece of the demon beast's soul. So even if the body is destroyed, there is still a chance for resurrection because of the soul inside the demon crystal. However, the spirit inside the level 8 demon crystal was clearly lifeless and dull. Very obviously, it must have been refined by some mysterious technique, making it just a power source with no ability to think of its own. That level 8 demon crystal of the mud dragon had become a very important part in opening the gate of heaven. Although Zhuaqi was vicious, he still had a deep love and admiration for the mud dragon. One can only imagine the despair he must have felt when seeing the last hope of resurrecting his father getting destroyed. Bai Mingshang, Qi Xiao, and Zhou Zi he all quietly walked towards the gate of heaven. As they approached the gate of heaven, the more cautious were their steps. Mistress, the 2 giant men next to Xia Xin Yen looked at the mysterious pattern in the valley and hesitated. These 2 seemed to know some secrets about the mysterious pattern. Xia Xin Yen shook her head. She silently gazed at everything in a strange light and looked at the far-standing Sure Yen. Sure Yen was also secretly watching everyone, and once he saw Xia Xin Yan's looking towards him, he was dazed for a second, then lightly nodded to Xia Xin Yen. A complex feeling flickered through Xia Xin Yan's eyes. She also slowly nodded towards him, but no one knew what thoughts were going through her mind. The gate of heaven has now opened. If you all are really not scared of death, then you may enter now. Xia Xin Yen didn't move from her place, but saw Qi Xiao and Bai Mingshang standing motionless before the gate. She couldn't resist the temptation to mock them. I'll go. Unexpectedly, Zhuaqi, who was immersed in grief, suddenly roared, I'd like to see what exactly is inside. Then, Zhuaqi's body moved as fast as lightning, storming into the gate of heaven like a moth to a flame, and disappeared into the bright white light. Zhuaqi's shadow quickly disappeared into the gate of heaven. The gate only warped for a second and did not show any other change. It still maintained its bright shine, as if waiting for the entrance of another person. Brother Zhou. Bai Mingsheng looked at Zhou Zihe and pondered for a second, then said, What do you think? Zhou Zihe shook his head and said, We're already at this point. If I return empty-handed, I will regret it for the rest of my life. If you want the riches, you have to take the risks. All right. Bai Mingsheng nodded in agreement. He hesitated for a second, then turned to Bai Mingsu and said, So, you stay outside. In Kuei Jioshan, you guys take care of Su. Pausing, Bai Mingshang then looked at Miu Dai and Di Yalan and furrowed his brows. What do you guys think? I want to go look inside. Miyudai knew that the gate of heaven would contain great danger, but she still didn't want to miss this chance of a lifetime. Okay, you may go in. Bai Mingsheng nodded. Follow me. Bai Mingsheng then followed after Zhuo Qi and entered the gate of heaven. Miyudai and Di Yalan exchanged a look. They both looked determined and followed Bai Mingsheng into the gate of heaven. Mr. Qishao, how about you? Xia Xinyan said casually. Of course I will enter too. Qishao smiled. He looked back at Zhuo and Shi Yan and said, Xiao Shi, you stay outside. I will go look inside alone. Master, I want to go inside it too. Zhuo pouted and said reluctantly. As a teacher, I'll go take a look at the situation first. If there are no problems, next time I will definitely take you along. Qishao scolded her with a straight face, then said to Shi Yan and the rest, what about the Shi family? Would you send someone to go and take a look too? Young master, I'll go. Kulong stood up and said to Shi Yan, I'll go. Shi Yan's expression was cold. He shouted with a deep voice, as if he didn't care the dangers in the gate of heaven. Deep down, he always had a daredevil factor, and he liked to challenge unknown mysteries. The very reason why he came to this world was because of his exploration of the blue holes. Of course, he wouldn't want to sit out on the exploration of the gate of heaven. Young master, let Kulong go. Han Feng said anxiously. Don't worry, I'll go. Shi Yan shook his head and insisted, I'm very curious as to what really is in the gate of heaven. If I don't go, I will regret it forever. Then, before Han Feng and Kulong could try to persuade him again, he immediately sprinted towards the gate of heaven. Young master. Kulong and Han Feng both screamed in fear, and they also ran towards the gate of heaven. By the time when they arrived at the gate, Shi Yan's body just so happened to disappear into the gate. The two exchanged glances and, without further hesitation, leaped into the gate of heaven. You guys look after Xiao Shi. Qishao told Wu Yunlian and Chu Ping, then he also flew out and disappeared into the gate of heaven. In the matter of a few minutes, all the masters in the valley leaped into the gate one after another. Truly, like the saying, people die in pursuit for money like birds die for food. In the Yin Valley, the only ones left were Bai Mingsu, Yin Kuei and Jiao Shan on one side, plus Zhuo Shi, Chu Ping, and Wu Yunlian on the other. Then there were also Xia Xinyan and the two towering giant men. Mistress, this is a false gate of heaven. One of the giant men whispered. Xia Xinyan's eyes flickered. She stared at the gate with the same expression. Right now the Sky Realm Masters were all in the gate of heaven, plus Xia Xinyan, and the two were at a distance from the other two sides, so no one could hear their quiet conversation. The false gate won't have the real god domain. This is only a small space created by a god realm master. It won't contain any unimaginable treasures, but it should contain the relics of the god realm master. Miss, why don't you go in? Maybe there's even the martial spirit inheritance of that person. One of the towering men said impatiently. Don't you all think that somewhere there's an invisible hand that's manipulating this all? Xia Xinyan snorted. He already arranged everything on the chessboard, and we're all just chess pieces in his game plan. We are all together, but still could not escape from his control. That old guy's been dead for thousands of years and still won't rest in peace. Mistress, you're saying? The Shi family's half of the fragmented map was probably obtained by Shi Yan. That half of the map was definitely together with These only immortal-level martial skill and only warriors with low capabilities would actually go and cultivate it. That guy purposely set the place in the Yin Valley, forcing the one who has to cultivate it to defend against the natural Yin Qi. Once the is cultivated, it would naturally swallow the Yin Qi here to form the Yin Pearls. Once the Yin Pearls form, the objective is clear. If the Gate of Heaven really had the martial spirit imprint, then only the one with the Yin Pearls could obtain it. Now, is there even a need for us to go in? Xia Xinyan said resentfully. That old guy, he already planned everything completely. He simply won't let anyone sabotage his plans. This time we came for nothing. If Shi Yan obtains the martial spirit imprint of that guy, then he will definitely become one of the god-children of the three-god sect. If he could go to the Endless Sea, the three-god sect would treat him like a treasure. Miss, The Three Gods sect is very powerful in the Endless Sea, and they're in opposition with us. If he really does obtain that person's martial spirit imprint, then he will definitely become the star god of the Three Gods sect in the future. We better take him out now. I know what to do, Xia Xian Yan said coldly. The two towering men nodded and became silent again. In a place with pitch-black darkness, there came a woman's cold voice. All of you go to the gate of heaven. Catch Mu Yu Dai and assist the Lord to explore the mysteries of the gate. Yes, mistress. A group of pale-faced warriors from the dark world knelt down on one knee, with blank expressions. Go. The voice in the dark came again. Dozens of warriors of the dark world moved one by one and soon entered the Yin Valley. Without even looking at the people in the valley, they walked straight into the gate of heaven. The people from the dark world. Bai Mingse shouted with a low voice, his expression slightly changed. The dark world should have been guarding on the outside. Why would they suddenly enter into the gate of heaven? As Yin Kuei and Jiao Shan watched the flow of warriors from the dark world coming in, the look in their eyes became grim. It can't be. We have to go in too, or else Grandpa won't be able to handle it on his own. Bai Mingsu pondered, and disregarding Yin Kuei and Jiao Shan's opposition, he also rushed into the gate. When Yin Kuei and Jiao Shan saw that he went in, they could only follow along without hesitation. Chapter 95, Desperate Fight. Chapter 95, Desperate Fight. There was a huge star river in the sky, which was exactly like the pattern formed in the Yin Valley by the sky snake's blood. In that star river, every star was as big as a mountain, and the distance between the stars was like heaven and earth, hundreds of thousands of meters away. Under the star river were various numerous clouds, floating freely and which were either formed of fire, yin qi, or poisonous air. Gray sky and gray earth. On the ground lay a huge statue with its back on the ground. The statue was of a muscular, handsome figure and sculpted to be clothed with only a stone shorts. The heart area of the stone statue was shining with starry light. The starry light was attracting the power in the star river, and similarly to the light from the starry river was becoming concentrated in the heart of the stone statue. The statue was carved very expertly, such that even the hair and veins were shown in exquisite delicacy. If one looked carefully, one could even see thousands of black spots moving through the veins. On the right palm of the stone statue, a little ant was staring up at the sky with a surprised look. That was Shiryen. After he arrived here, he was standing on the right palm of the statue, with oddly swaying plants all around him. Those plants, which swayed with the wind, were 10 meters high and as thick as a human waist, looking like the statue's hair. Although he didn't know that the plants looked like hair from up in the air. In his eyes, the right palm of that statue was 10 times larger than the Godstone Square in Tianyan City. Standing on that palm, Shiryen looked at the mysterious star river above him and was filled with amazement. He wasn't aware that he was on the palm of statue, nor did he know how huge the statue was. He had lost his sense of direction and was of the assumption that he was on a small hill. Tua! The Yin pearls in the Tian K, Shin K, and Yin Du meridians suddenly started spinning, while a mysterious attraction force came from the heart of that stone statue. Shiryen's body shook suddenly. The heart area which attracted the starlight was calling for the Yin pearls inside Shiryen, and the Yin pearls spun, as if urging him to go to the heart area. Standing on the palm of the stone statue, Shiryen looked quite serious, and after a little hesitance, he dashed to the heart area of the statue directly. Meanwhile, the small black men on the stone statue observed for a while, and realized the heart area was the most powerful place. Therefore, after being still for a while, those people gathered at the chest of the stone statue. Those people included the warriors from the Dark World, Mu Hui, Mu Yu Dai, Di Yalin, and Bai Mingsu. All warriors under the Earth Realm were moving towards the heart area. Under the heels of the stone statue, Bai Mingsheng, Qi Shao, Zhua Qi, the Dark Master, Yin Kuei, and Jiao Shan were suppressed by a huge power. Warriors above Earth Realm were all suppressed under its heels, unable to move even a bit. At that time, The group, including Bai Mingsheng and Qi Xiao, were trying to defend against the power which restrained them. But, however hard they tried, they couldn't get rid of that pressure or move an inch. Tua! Tua! The Yin pearls inside Shi Yan kept spinning, while Shi Yan held his breath and dashed toward the stone statue with a rigid face. Beside Shi Yan, the hairs of the stone statue were swaying like tall trees and blocking his sight. He felt like he was in a jungle instead of the palm of the statue. Not knowing how much time had passed, Shi Yan finally flew from the mountain-like palm to its right leg. Shi Yan's rushing body suddenly stopped as he looked ahead on alert. From a deep hole in front of him, one after another flaming stone men suddenly jumped out. These stone men were 3 meters tall and were wreathed in fire, giving off the smell of the 9-headed sky snake. If one looked down at it from upon the statue, he would find that that deep hole was actually the Yang-Qi meridian on its right arm. The 12 flaming stone men seemed to be disgusted by the smell of life. Once Shi Yan approached the hole, they appeared and jumped on him. Taking a deep breath, Shi Yan kept calm to operate his petrification martial spirit, and his skin turned dark brown in a short time. After he operated his petrification martial spirit, Shi Yan triggered by moving his profound qi all over his body. As those formed, Shi Yan dashed out like a missile. Dang, dang, dang. Among the flaming stone men, Shi Yan turned his fingers into spears and struck the stone men. The which could pierce through an elementary realm warrior, emitted the sound of metal clashing while striking the stone bodies. The power of the fire went into Shi Yan's fingers when he touched the stone men and felt pain in his fingers. No! His face changed. Shi Yan soon realized that that was inefficient when facing the stone men who were not made of flesh. Boom! 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 6 stone men made flaming fists and punched Shi Yan together. His couldn't bear the attacks and fell apart. Under those fists, Shi Yan was driven back in pain. His clothes were on fire. Thanks to his petrification martial spirit, his body was not hurt except for some pain. With a gloomy face, Shi Yan could figure out that every one of the 6 stone men was tougher than a human realm warrior. That was not working. He had to take another shot. As his will changed, Shi Yan's left hand gave out wisps of white smoke. Negative energy was triggered and combined with his profound qi. They flew out together and formed a huge. With his will, they moved swiftly and suddenly fell in the center of the stone men. A strong power of attraction gushed out of the field, making all the stone men to struggle painfully. It worked. Delighted, Shi Yan enhanced the power in the field and focused to twist it. Pa! 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 As the field span, one stone man was shattered into pieces and was thrown out of the field. Shi Yan was a little relieved before his face changed again. However, after leaving the field, the scattered parts of the stone man began to reform together. In merely 3 seconds, it had recombined and jumped at Shi Yan again. It was not killed. Realizing that, Shi Yan's face turned gloomier, and he triggered the field again to change its position. That stone man was wrapped again and shredded to pieces another time. This time, Shi Yan didn't try to kill them, but crossed the field in an instant and continued to dash forward after all the stone men were entangled. Half an hour later, from the deep hole of the stone statue's Jigo Meridian, one after another Yin Sha danced out. Yin Sha was produced by warrior spirits which absorbed Yin Qi. It was a dead thing, but could use part of the warrior's martial spirit. It was aggressive and in thirst of more spirits. Those Yin Sha waved their claws and flew toward Shi Yan from the deep hole. After a glance at the Yin Sha, Shi Yan's face turned cold. Inside the Yin Pearl, wisps of Yin power pervaded and triggered the 3 Yin swirls to spin, and a strong power of attraction broke out. Those Yin Sha suddenly showed fear and escaped to the deep hole. You think you can escape? Shi Yan smiled coldly, and the Yin swirls span even faster. The Yin Sha struggled hard while being pulled by Shi Yan's Yin swirls, but still forced towards Shi Yan little by little. The more they approached Shi Yan, the more they were influenced by the Yin swirl. All of a sudden, one Yin Sha stopped struggling and turned into Yin Qi and went inside Shi Yan's chest. The Yin Sha dissolved in the Yin swirls and turned into pure energy which was attached to the center of the Yin swirls. The rest of the Yin Sha struggled in fear but couldn't get escape the Yin swirls. They were pulled in and turned into Yin Qi inside of it. Quickly, all the Yin Sha were absorbed and Shuryen continued advancing. At the same time, the same thing was happening at every corner of the stone statue. Bai Mingsu, Mu Yudai, Di Yalin, Mu Hui and warriors from the dark world also met danger when they headed for the heart. They were all trapped by the flaming stone men, Yin Sha, poisonous demons and mud dragons which came from the meridians of the stone statue. Shuryen continued to rush forward. On his way, he came across more flaming stone men and Yin Sha, which were taken care of by the same means, and then he came to the right elbow slowly. Shuryen stopped again. Ahead of him were 5 warriors from the dark world, who all were around the first or second sky of the human realm. They had been separated from the others by the gate of heaven when they entering. And now, all of them were heading for the heart, but smelled like scorched flesh. The 5 warriors from the dark world also spotted Shuryen. They turned back, glanced at Shuryen, and came to an agreement silently. With cold eyes, they walked towards Shuryen slowly. Warriors from the dark world. Shuryen's eyes were like torches as he spotted the sign of the dark world on the bare shoulder of one warrior. Kill! That guy yelled when the rest separated to encircle Shuryen in an arc. You are seeking for death. With a cold face, Shuryen's eyes showed a bloodthirst. After a shout, he dashed out like a sharp sword. Dash! Chapter 96. Kill all the way. Chapter 96. Kill all the way. With white smoke engulfing him, Shuryen's thoughts were all about bloodthirst, brutality, insanity, and terror while under the effect of the negative energy. There was only a single desire, and that was to kill them all. Standing amid the 5 warriors from the dark world, Shuryen had a rigid face. One after another magic snakes made of negative energy tried to intertwine those warriors crazily. Bang! One dark world warrior scratched Shuryen's chest. Hee. Shuryen chuckled cunningly as he kicked that warrior bluntly. His 10 fingers were like spears and left 10 bloody holes on the warrior's chest in an instant. With that guy's miserable screams, Shuryen stepped back and blocked another attack from another warrior's green light to his head. 3 formed quietly on his 2 sides and his back. Standing amid the 3, Shuryen looked at the 5 dark world warriors coldly. Wanna kill me? Hehe. I wanna kill you too. Kill! Those dark world warriors yelled and rushed forward together. The warrior who got 5 blood holes in his chest suddenly sat down cross-legged. Green thorns were triggered by him and shot from his palms. Profound level martial skill. Dozens of icy, needle-like thorns flashed through the air toward Shuryen like lightning. Dang, 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 dang. The crisp sound of metal on metal came from all over Shuryen's body as the couldn't break Shuryen's petrification martial spirit. The badly injured man's pale face changed as he ordered, strike together. The other 4 warriors went to the 4 corners while Shuryen was at the center point. 4 blue curtains appeared from above their heads like clouds and formed together before they thrust toward Shuryen. The blue curtains had so strong power that they bound Shuryen in an instant. The 4 warriors were delighted as they jumped up and took out weapons to stab Shuryen. Field! Trigger! Shuryen shouted. The 4 warriors were inside the invisible and were wrapped by them all of a sudden. Being greatly distorted, the 4 warriors turned stiff and couldn't even operate their profound chi. Deeply horrified, they didn't know what exactly had happened. Howl! Shuryen shouted into the sky, his muscles trembling. At the same time, the white smoke became denser and all sorts of negative energies were triggered. In an instant, a vicious power broke out inside Shuryen's body and flashed through his body like an electric current. In the howls, Shuryen managed to break through the blue curtain. Boom! A huge roar came, and the big blue curtain made from the 4 smaller ones exploded into blue light spots. Shuryen smiled cunningly and coldly, and rushed into one and thrust his into the warrior contained within. Pooh! Shuryen's was thrust into the eyes of the warrior entangled in the field. His eyes turned into two blood holes, and even his brain could be seen. He died instantly. Shiryen moved swiftly, crossing into the other two fields. Pooh! 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 The other three warriors were also bleeding from their eyes and died in the same way, in a very short time. The suddenly contracted. The last Dark World warrior sitting on the ground was terrified and hurriedly tried to escape. Do you really think you can run away? Shiryen laughed coldly, while he flashed to the warrior and stabbed him in the back. His arm went right through the man's heart. Right now, all the 5 Dark World warriors were killed. Covered in blood, Shiryen stood beside the 5 corpses, looking content. He was enjoying the negative energy flowing out from them. Soon, the 5 body dried up, while Shiryen's meridians were filled with profound qi and his desire for blood surged. Without any attempt to suppress the effects, Shiryen kept activated while his desire to kill was strengthened. He walked to the heart area. Half an hour later, another 2 warriors of the second sky of the nascent realm encountered him. Without uttering any word, Shiryen dashed over with a hideous face. Under the bloodthirsty effects of, he killed the 2 warriors easily and continued his journey. 12 Insha suddenly flew up from a deep hole ahead when they saw Shiryen. Hehe. Shiryen chuckled coldly but in a happy mood. He shifted his Yin swirls and a huge attraction force came into being. The 12 Insha were eventually swallowed by Shiryen's Yin swirls and turned into Yin qi. All sorts of negative energy was purifying and gushing out of Shiryen's meridians. Ignoring the abnormal state of his body, Shiryen kept advancing. All along the way, Shiryen became a god of slaughter as he killed instantly as long as he saw a Dark World warrior. The Dark World warriors in this area were mostly at the 3rd sky of the nascent realm or the 1st or 2nd sky of the human realm. They couldn't compete with Shiryen and were all killed by him. All along the way, Shiryen killed 21 Dark World warriors, absorbed 65 Insha, and finally reached the right shoulder of the stone statue. Mu Hui's figure suddenly popped out from a deep hole ahead. Beside him stood 3 Dark World warriors of the 3rd sky of the human realm. Inside the deep hole, 3 destroyed mud dragons were wriggling, trying to reconstruct their bodies. Mu Hui frowned and a slight resignation flashed across his odd face. These things are too tough and can't be killed. There are hundreds of them in every deep hole which keeps consuming my profound qi. Young master, someone's there. A Dark World warrior pointed to Shiryen. Shiryen was surrounded by white smoke and a murderous air boiled around him. The blood on him turned into blood cocoons while he smiled a bloody smile. It's you. Mu Hui was surprised and recognized he was Shiryen, who always stood beside Han Feng and Ku Long. While Mu Hui was in the Yin Valley, he had observed but didn't pay much attention to Shiryen. Rather, he was more focused on the experts like Zhua Qi and Xia Xian. Since Shiryen was only at the 1st sky of the human realm, Mu Hui never took him seriously. Seeing Shiryen approaching with a murderous air, Mu Hui was perplexed, not knowing what happened to Shiryen. Young master, we have to kill whoever we meet. That warrior wore a plain expression. The earlier we kill one, the earlier we have less adversaries. The mistress of the Dark World has ordered that we even have to kill Bai Mingsu if we met him. One of you stay and take care of him. The rest follow me. Mu Hui nodded and ordered, then turned to walk ahead. 2 warriors followed Mu Hui quietly and left at once. That talkative guy stayed there, looking at Shiryen coldly. You have bad luck. Bad luck. Shiryen laughed wildly. Actually, I have rather good luck. Really good. You Dark World warriors fed me well. Hehe. I have killed 21 Dark World warriors. And you will be my 22nd. Just then, Shiryen rushed towards him. 2 minutes later, that talkative warrior turned into a dry dead body, his head and body separated. Shiryen sucked up his negative energy and continued to run up. 10 minutes later, Shiryen saw Mu Hui and the other 2 warriors again. What? Li Tua was killed by you. Mu Hui then took Shiryen seriously and his face turned dignified. A 1st sky of the human realm killed Li Tua, who was at the 3rd sky. It seems you're something. Shiryen didn't answer, but smiled coldly. His desire for blood was increasing rapidly as he walked towards Mu Hui step by step. Mu Hui was at the third sky of the human realm, but since he had a martial spirit and trained in high-class martial skills, he was more capable than the average warrior of his level. Shi approached him step by step, but although he looked vicious and insane, he was actually cool-minded. After 5 steps, he acutely perceived that Mu Hui was a formidable adversary. "You're already dead." Mu Hui stared at him and yelled, "You're already dead." The 4 words struck into Shi mind like some mysterious incantation. An astounding power suddenly exploded in Shi mind. The 4 words conquered his perception and stopped all his thoughts. "Kill him." So bored. Mu Hui ordered indifferently and shook his head before he walked forward quickly. The 2 warriors walked towards Shi with dull expressions and stabbed Shi with the swords in their hands. Dang! Dang! The sound of metal clashing came from Shi chest again. Men? The 2 warriors' faces changed and they started to trigger more profound chi in their swords, then raised them to stab Shi's eyes. The strong strikes on his chest suddenly woke him up from his confused state. In his eyes, 2 tips of sharp swords were expanding slowly. Surprised, Shi shifted his head and the sword slipped past his temple. He could feel the coldness on the swords clearly. Bang! Bang! A boiling negative energy exploded from Shi's shoulders. 2 bunches of pale light delved into the 2 warriors' bodies in an instant. Struck by the negative energy, the 2 warriors felt like they were being dragged into an endless blood sea and were being eaten by thousands of ghosts. They were dumbstruck. Pooh! Pooh! 5 bloody holes appeared on their necks and blood came gushing out. Shi looked on coldly as he tossed the blood on his fingers, absorbed the profound chi in them. He coldly glanced at Mu Hui, who was moving, and dashed forward. Chapter 97. Grind. Chapter 97. Grind. Shi appeared again. This time, Mu Hui's expression became serious and his seductive eyes flickered with some coldness. He bitterly watched Shi, who was walking towards him step by step. 3 human realm warriors were individually killed by Shi, especially the last 2, who died after he used his soul martial spirit on Shi. "You're not bad." Mu Hui slowly took a deep breath. "The result is still going to be the same, though. You will still die in my hands." Shi's expression was slightly ferocious. The negative energies in all of his meridians were churning like waves, and wisps of pale white fog covered his whole body. The different negative emotions were rampaging throughout his body. These violent and murderous thoughts formed a dominating will around his body. The will was like an evil spirit that could destroy everything in its path. However, his mentality was clear and calm as ever. Under the conditions of, Shi became very sensitive. He could feel the most minuscule details of the different essences in this bizarre world. He could even feel the circulation path of the profound chi in Mu Hui's body. The soul martial spirit. This was the most mysterious kind of martial spirit. Warriors with the soul martial spirit had the most formidable senses, with the power to delude people's minds with their speech. Their insight into the natural energies was also a lot broader than ordinary warriors. What Mu Hui had was precisely the soul martial spirit. Once he breaks into the nirvana realm and forms a sea of knowledge inside his mind, the soul martial spirit would become even stronger. One sentence would have the power to drive people to madness and put them into a situation beyond redemption. Previously, with one sentence from Mu Hui, Shi was put into a suspended dream, in which his body became cold and stiff. If it weren't for the negligence of those 2 Dark World warriors, he could have already ended up dead back there. And because of that, this time when Shi sprinted forward, the first thing he did was to securely guard his mind, as he didn't dare give another chance for Mu Hui to use the soul martial spirit to paralyze his mind again. The Shi family's petrification martial spirit sure is something. It looks like those 2 weren't able to kill you in one shot, and that's what woke you up. Mu Hui looked at the sword gash on the clothes on Shi's chest. His long, thin eyes slightly squinted, and a seductive light suddenly shone from his eyes. That beam of seductive light became brighter and brighter. Then slowly, Mu Hui's eyes became like bright and dazzling gems under the sun. A flow of deluding mental power was released from those eyes. This mental power was like an invisible storm that suddenly covered the whole area. "Look!" Mu Hui shouted. Shi Yan's whole body stiffened and his eyes became dazed again. The profound qi in his body behaved as if it was frozen and became hard to circulate. Mu Hui raised his right arm and green electric light shot from his 5 fingers, which quickly condensed under his control. Soon, a long knife formed in his hand, shining with a strange green light. The long knife looked like it was real and gave off a dazzling and chilling bright light. Holding there was a confident smile on Mu Hui's lips. He slowly walked towards Shi Yan as if taking a casual stroll. Lube-dub, lube-dub. At Shi Yan's chest, the Yin pearls continuously pulsed. Summoned by the strange light spots at the stone statue's heart, the Yin pearls in his meridians became more and more restless. The traumatized Shi Yan suddenly felt a strange movement in the Yin pearls. His soul felt as if it was in an endless dark abyss. It was sinking quickly, like it was going to be swallowed by the abyss and could never have its own individual thought again. Suddenly, the negative energies fiercely burst from the meridians in his head. Feelings of bloodlust, madness, and hate quickly flowed into the abyss and entered the mind of Shi Yan as it was falling into the dark abyss. Boom! His head suddenly shook, and Shi Yan's degrading mind was forcibly cleared by the negative energies. What? Mu Hui immediately noticed the change. He exclaimed, and the in his hand swung down without hesitation. Bzzz, bzzz, bzzz. The air exploded wherever they went. And in its glowing green light, they became thinner and thinner, almost as thin as an onion skin. After Shi Yan was wide awake, he saw the coming straight at him. His heart shook, and without hesitation he dodged to the left. Pooh! A beam of electric light flashed, and a deep bloody gash appeared on Shi Yan's right arm. What sort of power was affixed to the knife that it was able to break his petrification martial spirit? Shi Yan's expression suddenly changed. Mu Hui's eyes were also full of surprise. His expression became more serious and said, "Not bad. This slash only left a gash and didn't chop your whole arm off." The petrification martial spirit from the Shi family indeed has astonishing defensive powers. Usually when Mu Hui pulled out even disaster realm warriors would avoid it. Not many would go into close combat with Mu Hui when he's holding the. From Mu Hui's perspective, even though the Shi family's martial spirit was extraordinary, it was still flesh and blood in nature, and shouldn't be able to withstand the energy of the dead spirits in them. However, one slash didn't sever Shi Yan's arm and only left a mere bloody gash. He was even more surprised than Shi Yan was. Backing away quickly, Shi Yan took in a deep breath and secretly released 3 and tried to incite the at the same time. This was the first time he had used the in combat. The 6 Yin pearls combined their forces, releasing a surge of Yin power that followed along Shi Yan's arm and rushed straight towards the palm of his right hand. A head-sized green light ball quickly formed in his palm. Electric snakes intertwined inside the green light ball, and wisps of chilling evil powers flowed out from inside the ball. It was filled with a dark, cold ambience. Yin power continued to vigorously flow into the light ball. The green light ball became bigger and bigger. In a few seconds, the light ball was already the size of a basin, shooting out green light like a green sun. Mu Hui's expression shook for the first time. "Friend, stop struggling." Mu Hui said. The soul martial spirit was like a shockwave, and it struck at Shi Yan's soul again. Blast! Before the soul martial spirit could unleash its effect, Shi Yan suddenly roared. The green light ball in his hand abruptly flew out and smashed at Mu Hui like lightning. Boom! All of a sudden, the green light ball burst out and wisps of pure Yin power, along with traces of Shi Yan's will, fell towards Mu Hui like raindrops. At the sound of the explosion, Shi Yan's restricted soul was finally pulled out from the dark abyss by the negative energies. Clarity returned to his eyes. On the other side, Mu Hui was doused by the rain-like shower of Yin power. His body suddenly became stiff, and the circulation speed of his profound qi slowed down. The shining clenched in his hand was also flickering. It was also affected by the Yin power formed after the explosion of the green light ball. Move! The three suddenly drifted away from Yan's side and silently moved towards Mu Hui. Before Mu Hui could react, Yan flew out like a missile. His thin body swiftly fell into one of the and stormed at Mu Hui with his fist. "You're dead meat." A bloody cold glare flickered across Mu Hui's eyes. Mu Hui raised his left hand, and the veins in his hand popped up. His left hand instantly became twice as big and turned a frightening dark green color. An ambience of dead souls came from his hand. Mu Hui raised his hand to strike, and as if it could block the space, smashing towards Yan's iron fist head-on. Boom! In the thundering rumble, Yan's body was as solid as stone and balanced on the ground. But Mu Hui was completely in shock. His body was forcibly thrown back. The earth-shaking, terrifying power that projected from Yan's fist exploded onto Mu Hui's and forcefully knocked Mu Hui away. Yan, who was at the first sky of the human realm, with his one punch, managed to make Mu Hui, who was at the third sky of the human realm, to lose ground. Under the effect of this punch, which was accompanied by the different negative energies, skyrocketed in power. It was definitely not something that a warrior of the same realm could handle. This was just the beginning of Mu Hui's suffering. Just when he finally managed to steady himself, he suddenly felt like he had sunk into a swamp, and his body rotated uncontrollably. He was directly sucked into a setup by Yan. Mu Hui's face suddenly changed. Hee. Yan grinned, but his eyes were as cold as ice. He fiercely flew out. Crush! Mu Hui roared inside the end. An enormous flow of spiritual energy suddenly poured into Yan's mind. Yan's flying body stopped midway and fell to the ground. Mu Hui's expression was grim. The in his hand drew a strange arc, and wisps of dark, cold energy flowed from the and churned inside the gravitational field. The soul martial spirit was triggered again. Mu Hui kept secretly reminding himself to be calm. He put in all his concentration to feel the power change in the field, trying to figure out a way to escape from it. But there was a spirit-level martial skill after all. Plus, it was also formed with both the negative energies and profound qi. Despite having the soul martial spirit, Mu Hui still couldn't figure out any pattern in a short period of time. The high-speed whirling of the knot only slowed down the flow of his profound qi. It seemed to also weaken the sensitivity of his soul martial spirit. There were already traces of sweat on Mu Hui's forehead. His body kept rotating, but he couldn't figure out the pattern of the. On the other hand, Yan only lay on the ground for a moment before the outburst of negative energies dragged him out of the dark abyss again. Yan's eyes suddenly became clear again, and he sneered. He stared coldly at the whirling Mu Hui in the. With just a change of his thoughts, he stirred up the Yin power in his body and poured it into the once again. With more power added, the gravitational force became stronger. Just by circulating the negative energies and profound qi, that could already forcibly stop a warrior of the same realm. Now that he added Yin power to the field, the power of the surged once again. A flow of chaotic power suddenly burst from the circulation speed of the field doubled. Pooh! Mu Hui spurted out a mouthful of blood, and he felt as if his soul martial spirit was in a meat grinder. A stabbing pain was assaulting his head, and all the profound qi in his body was ground into a mess. His defense became significantly lower too. Yan held in his breath to concentrate, and his expression was cold and stern. He used all his will to manipulate the chaos of was full-blown. The frantic grinding power violently tore Mu Hui's body. In the field, Mu Hui's whole body was splattered with blood, his flesh torn and exposed. The seductive light in his eyes also slowly dimmed. Chapter 98. Fattened Up. Chapter 98. Fattened Up. Mu Hui was shivering, and the flesh on his body was slowly falling off. At this point, his soul martial spirit was completely useless. He couldn't even let out a roar anymore. And at this moment, Yan entered into his fingers were like a spear, stabbing straight towards Mu Hui's neck. Poochie! Blood sprayed out of Mu Hui's neck like a fountain. His spine broke, and he died tragically in the field. All the profound qi in Mu Hui's body flowed into the 720 meridians in Shurian's body. Mu Hui was at the third sky of the human realm, but his profound qi was much richer than other warriors of the same realm. The time it took Shurian to absorb all the power in his body was also a few dozen seconds more than with other people. Soon, Mu Hui turned into a dry corpse and fell to the ground lifelessly. Shurian's expression was calm. He closed his eyes to feel the profound qi that came from Mu Hui's body. Feeling the changes in his meridians, he slowly sat down on the ground. There was a swelling pain coming from his meridians. The continuous intake of profound qi from many warriors made his meridians sting slightly. The different negative energies kept pounding in his body, agitating his soul. However, this time the backlash in his body was not that fierce and crazy, and he didn't know why. As he calmed down and removed himself from the effects of, Shurian realized his whole body was sore. But the overflowing negative energies did not overpower his mentality, nor made him fall into a state of slaughter and chaos. Closing his eyes and calming himself down, he felt the purification of negative energies in his meridians. Shurian quietly tried to find the source. A change in his soul. After quite a while, Shurian's mind flickered, and there was an answer in his mind. During the fight with Mu Hui, his soul martial spirit occasionally unleashed strange effects and repeatedly tried to pull Shurian's soul into an abyss of darkness to become a captive under the power of his mind. Whenever that happened, the negative energies in Shurian's body would suddenly burst out. Those negative energies rushed to the depth of his soul like lightning and forcibly dragged his consciousness out of the dark abyss, letting him escape the shackles of Mu Hui's soul martial spirit instantly. Because of Mu Hui's soul martial spirit, the negative energies broke out again and again, using the dark, evil, negative powers to attack Mu Hui's soul martial spirit. During the clash, the negative energies that should have crumbled Shurian's soul were mostly used up fighting against Mu Hui's soul attacks. The violent negative energies should have caused Shurian to fall into a state beyond redemption. Yet because of the existence of Mu Hui's soul martial spirit, those negative energies became an aid to defeat Mu Hui's soul attacks. That means the soul martial spirit used by Mu Hui counteracted the negative energies that could have destroyed Shurian's mind and helped him recover himself. These string of thoughts rapidly flashed through Shurian's mind, and he was correctly able to determine that the reason he didn't face the tremendous backlash from the negative energies was due to it acting as a constraint against Mu Hui's attacks from his soul martial spirit. Deep in his heart, there were hints of violent and murderous thoughts growing, but these thoughts were no longer that intense. Using his strong will, Shurian didn't fall into a state of frantic killing. Thinking through these things, he relaxedly sat on the ground and silently started to circulate his profound qi. After some time, the stinging in the meridians of his body suddenly started becoming intense. Under the tearing pain, wisps of pure strange power slowly flowed out of his meridians, forming streams of warm currents in his body. After transforming the profound qi of the many human realm warriors, the extraordinary power that resulted was quite impressive. Most of the power spread throughout Shurian's whole body and disappeared into his flesh, bones, meridians, and organs. Only a minority of the extraordinary power gathered in the profound qi in his dantian, making his profound qi much stronger and purer. Shurian's heart was calm. He didn't first go and explore the change in his profound qi, but instead he sank his mind into the flesh, bones, and meridians of his body. He could clearly feel that the wisps of mysterious power formed into what was like a magical nutrient. And in a way he couldn't understand, it was slowly nourishing his whole body. During this process, Shurian felt like he was bathing in a hot spring. Every pore on his body relaxed and were all taking in that miraculous nutrient. His body was slowly, silently changing. Those mysterious powers moved around in his meridians, disappearing into his flesh and bones, taking root in his organs, and resting in his skull. He digested the information deeply. It was not the petrification martial spirit. Shurian's mind was crystal clear. He immediately realized the mysterious power that was nourishing his body was definitely not the petrification martial spirit. It was the immortal martial spirit. A realization popped into his mind and Yen suddenly opened his eyes. He quickly looked at his right arm. The right arm that was slashed by the had a deep wound. But now, the flesh in the wound was slowly wiggling and healing at a visible speed. The flesh and the meridians seemed as if they had a life of their own. Under the watchful eyes of Yen, the wound that was 2 centimeters deep gradually healed bit by bit. The flesh wreathed together and the cells reformed. The wound slowly closed up, forming into a scar, then finally disappeared altogether. 10 minutes. In a mere 10 minutes, the 2-centimeter deep wound had been completely healed, and not even a single trace was left. The place at which his right arm was harmed was now as smooth as glass. There was not even a single line, nor a trace of blood. It was as if he was never hurt. Yen moved his arm and realized there wasn't even a single bit of pain. His right arm had no abnormalities whatsoever and felt same as the left arm. Yen's eyes were bright, his face was irrepressibly ecstatic. In a span of 10 minutes, such a deep wound was healed to its original state. There was no pain and no discomfort. When did his immortal martial spirit become so impressive? Yen clearly remembered that his recovery speed back then was definitely not this fast. Back then, even if his wound had been healed, he would still feel some discomfort and some pain. He would need more than half a day for a wound that size to be completely healed. This time, it was only 10 minutes. The immortal martial spirit has reached a new stage. After a short while, Yen quickly and keenly grasped the key point. The magical upgrade of the petrification martial spirit reminded him and made him realize that after consuming so much profound qi, those extraordinary powers activated the immortal martial spirit just like how it did with the petrification martial spirit. And now the immortal martial spirit had entered a new stage. No wonder all those extraordinary powers mostly flowed into his flesh, meridians, bones, and organs. Turns out this time it was the nourishing his immortal martial spirit. Now everything was clear. Yen's expression was full of joy. He seriously felt the changes in his body. Then after a while he finally calmed down and continued to sit there and circulate his profound qi. The profound qi in his dantian had also absorbed a part of that extraordinary power. Now, under the shifting of his thoughts, the pure profound qi slowly flowed along all the meridians in his body. Every time after completing a full cycle, the cluster of the most pristine profound qi in his dantian became more refined. Slowly, the refined body of profound qi turned into what was like a bright light ball. With every circulation cycle, the size of the light ball became smaller, but the power it contained grew even more. Yen was delighted again. The change in the profound qi light ball was exactly a special sign of the breakthrough from the first sky of the human realm to the second or third sky. Starting from the first sky of the human realm, every time you reached a new sky, the size of the profound qi light ball in the dantian would become smaller. But the profound qi within would grow stronger in power. This was the process of refinement. Only when you refined over and over again would the impurities in the profound qi light ball be completely cleared. And only then would the profound qi become more and more pure, followed by the strengthening of the power it contains. Realizing that this was the golden opportunity to break from the first sky to the second sky of the human realm, Yen didn't dare to hesitate. He concentrated with all of his will to circulate his profound qi. He repeatedly circulated and refined his profound qi. The impurities in the profound qi lessened, making the profound qi become more and more pure. In that strange space, there was no concept of time. After who knows how long, the profound qi light ball shrunk from the size of a fist to the size of a walnut. However, the concentration of the profound qi was 30% stronger than before. Not only that, the pure profound qi was circulating in his body at a speed twice as fast as before. Under his will, a wisp of profound qi flowed out of his fingertip. It was shining in dazzling white light, and there was a faint glistening tint in it, like some mysterious crystal. Yen had a joyous look on his face. He looked at the wisp of glistening profound qi, and the smile on his lips slowly widened. Human realm, second sky. This time the warriors from the dark world really fattened him up. Not only did his immortal martial spirit enter into a new stage, he also reached a step further in his martial art realm, and straight up entered the second sky of the human realm. Lube-dub, lube-dub, lube-dub. The Yin pearls from the 3 meridians of Shinkei, Tiankei, and Indu suddenly started pulsing violently. The pulse rate of the Yin pearls this time was much faster than usual. The summoning power from the heart of the stone statue also grew stronger. Shi Yan's mind flicked. He couldn't help but gaze towards the place where the starlight gathered. He suddenly realized that the light from the starry sky seemed to become disordered. They wandered at that one area like fireflies, but didn't flow into the mysterious place anymore. There was a change. Shi Yan's brows furrowed. From the strange movements of the Yin pearls in his chest and the unusual phenomenon with the stars, he could sense something bad was happening. Lube-dub, 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 lube-dub. The pulsing of the Yin pearls were becoming even more lively, as if they were urging him to quickly hurry to that area. There seemed to be something anxiously waiting for him. Boom, boom. A loud thundering sound, even when it was 1,000 li away, still reached here resiliently from that place. The 3 meridians of Shinkei, Tiankei, and Indu suddenly stung in pain. He felt as if someone was attacking his meridians. His body was indescribably weird. Without hesitation, Shi Yan took in a deep breath, sprinted, and rushed to that place with his fastest speed. Chapter 99, But I Want to Kill You. Chapter 99, But I Want to Kill You. At the heart of the stone statue, in a huge deep hole, starlight was shining like fireworms. The deep hole was not made of stone, but it contained a red crystal with a black spot moving on its surface like a star. The heart-shaped red crystal was floating in the center of the hole, and light from the edges of the hole was shooting into the crystal. The red crystal was so clear and beautiful and had a mysterious power buried inside it. It was like staring at the starry sky when one looked at that crystal. The heart-shaped crystal was as large as a fist, as if it was a big light spot in the hole, although it was sending out dazzling lights and overwhelming energy. On the wall of the hole, dense bunches of dazzling lights flashed into the red crystal and covered the glittering crystal like a natural shield. Off to the side of the deep hole, Bai Mingsi looked indifferent, and the 3 warriors were staring at the crystal in surprise. Up in the sky, the massive star river pattern projected its light onto the crystal and drifted by slowly. Every warrior could feel the mysterious energy from that crystal. As if it had the ability to concentrate all the power from the stars, it was attracting every warrior. No matter if it was Bai Mingsi or the 3 Dark World warriors, they all stared at the crystal greedily. Why hasn't the young master arrived? This mysterious crystal will be taken by Bai Mingsi. A Dark World warrior at the first sky of the disaster realm said coldly. His face looked weird in the light of the crystal. The other 2 warriors of the 3rd sky of the human realm were standing separately by his side, keeping watch for Mu Hui, who could show up any second. Bai Mingsi stretched out his left hand again and blue flames flew out. The blue flames flew up into the sky and turned into a huge blue hand projecting onto the crystal. Boom! The light shield on the crystal produced a huge deafening sound and blocked Bai Mingsi's huge hand made from his polar ice flame martial spirit. The huge blue hand shattered as soon as it touched the light shield. Bunches of blue flames turned into small flames and shot above the light shield. Gradually, it turned back into a huge blue hand again. Bai Mingsi didn't give up as he triggered his polar ice flame martial spirit again. Boom! The light shield defended again, shattering Bai Mingsi's polar ice flame martial spirit and turning it back to blue flames. Under Bai Mingsi's consistent attacks, the light shield was twisted and squeezed like a balloon, causing it to withdraw into the crystal a bit. Bai Mingsi's polar ice flame martial spirit had an icy air which could freeze everything. Every time the huge hand touched the light shield, the icy air would permeate into it. After several times, the defensive power of the light shield became weaker. A secret delight flashed in Bai Mingsi's eyes. Bang! 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 Under the 3 warriors' eyes, Bai Mingsu operated his polar ice flame martial spirit again and again to seize that crystal, permeating the icy air into the light shield to decrease its defensive power. This is bad. The Disaster Realm warrior changed his expression, as he said in a low voice, Bai Mingsu will get the crystal soon if he is not disturbed. Our young master will be too late. The lord and mistress of the dark world would be angry if Bai Mingsu got this crystal. What should we do now? Stop Bai Mingsu. That guy ordered and operated his right away. Just as Bai Mingsu's blue hand tried to catch the crystal, that showed up and was thrust into the blue hand. Chi chi chi. As soon as it touched the blue hand, the claw slowed down and sent out dim blue light. It was suppressed by the polar ice flame. Seeing the situation deteriorate, the other two warriors took action as well. Flew toward Bai Mingsu. Bai Mingsu's face turned icy as he said coldly, "You finally can't wait." Immediately, Bai Mingsu vanished into the air. The next moment, Bai Mingsu appeared right beside them, and the polar ice flame turned into small bunches of flames and tried to wrap up the three warriors. The three were terrified and soon worked together to fight against Bai Mingsu. Bai Mingsu yelled and vanished again. Bang! A warrior of the third sky of the human realm fell to the ground on his back. Then, Bai Mingsu showed a cold smile. You guys want to compete with me? Bunches of blue flames crossed by the frozen man who died quickly. Bai Mingsu yelled again and appeared behind another warrior and patted his head. Puh! That guy's head exploded and he died instantly. The last Disaster Realm warrior sat down in terror and tried to trigger more. Green needle-like thorns came out from his body and shot in all directions. You are a Disaster Realm warrior, but you are not favored by God for you don't have a martial spirit. Bai Mingsu smirked. An ice wall coagulated from polar ice flames appeared in front of him and the thorns were blocked. The Disaster Realm warrior shifted his face. Without hesitation, he continued to trigger his thorns which shot in all directions. He knew that Bai Mingsu has the teleport martial spirit, so he couldn't shoot his thorns in only one direction, although it consumed much of his profound qi. He wanted to buy more time for Mu Hui to arrive. Unfortunately, he didn't know that Mu Hui had already been killed by Shi Yan. Standing behind the ice wall, Bai Mingsu was not in a hurry. He watched that warrior like a cat watching a mouse. I would like to see how long you can last. He couldn't endure for long. 3 minutes later, his thorns became less and less. To trigger the cost a lot of profound qi. Although the thorns were powerful, it consumed much profound qi. Therefore, he realized that his profound qi was about to run out. Why hadn't the young master arrived? That man looked around quickly and became more and more panicked. You won't meet him. Knowing he was waiting for Mu Hui, Bai Mingsu said indifferently, because you are going to die. Then Bai Mingsu teleported again. This time, his body turned into hard ice and approached the warrior through the thorns. Under that guy's horrified eyes, the ice surrounding Bai Mingsu's body expanded and he was covered by the polar ice flame. Kak. His body froze quickly and became an ice corpse. His terrified expression was also frozen on his face. Bai Mingsu raised his leg and kicked the man with a disappointed face. Puh! The frozen warrior was smashed into several blocks of ice. His body was shattered. Bai Mingsu walked at a leisure pace towards the deep hole and frowned as he looked at the floating crystal. It's finally quiet. Taa. Just then, light steps came from afar. Bai Mingsu frowned with an annoyed face. Too annoying. These people from the dark world. It's like they won't even disappear. Turning his head back, Bai Mingsu looked to the direction where the footsteps came from. Bai Mingsu wondered, and a smirk climbed up his mouth. Well, how surprising that this boy is still alive. The Dark World warriors are all crap. Shi Yan stopped his steps and stared at Bai Mingsu who looked gloomy. Shi Yan, it's really lucky for you to live till now. Bai Mingsu beamed. We are both from the Merchant Union, the 5 big families, so we could be friends in the future. Therefore, I don't want to kill you. Leave now, and I can pretend that I've never seen you here. You don't want to kill me? Shi Yan beamed. No. Leave. Before I change my mind. Bai Mingsu nodded. But, I want to kill you. With a smile in his corner of his mouth, Yan's eyes still showed coldness as he replied, "I have waited for too long." Bai Ming was surprised at first. Then he pulled himself together and said, "So audacious. Never mind, it won't take much time to kill you. And the Shi family will lose hope if I kill you. My grandpa will like it." As he was talking, Bai Ming walked slowly toward him without using his teleport. "Tata, Tata." Just then, steps came from afar again. Before long, Mu Dai and Di Yalan ran in this direction in worry. As they arrived, they didn't even look at Shi Yan, instead focusing on Bai Mingsu. Mu Dai asked happily, "Young Master Bai Ming, you've arrived?" Bai Mingsu bowed a little and nodded to them with a smile. "Yeah, I've been here for quite a while. Also, I have cleaned some trash from the dark world to avoid troubles later." "Well, you haven't cleaned up this trouble," Shi Yan stated indifferently, appearing somewhat bored. "You. You're far from able to cause me trouble." Bai Mingsu scorned, "It's no harder to kill you than it is to kill an ant. I'm waiting." Chapter 100. Endure. Chapter 100. Endure. The big Chapter 100. And as a big thank you to our readers, look out for 5 bonus chapters coming soon. After Mu Dai and Di Yalan arrived, they said hello to Bai Mingsu first and then were attracted by the floating crystal in the deep hole. They looked excited at the sight of the shining crystal and could clearly sense the mysterious energy from it. Every warrior was able to tell that this crystal was extraordinary. Mu Dai and Di Yalan had suffered a lot to get here. They fought against the Dark World warriors, Flaming Stone Men, Yin Sha, and Mud Dragons for the big chance here. As for Shi Yan, they just glanced at him once and turned away. In arrogance, Bai Mingsu walked over to Shi Yan step by step without using his teleport martial spirit. Shi Yan stood still, seemingly waiting for Bai Mingsu to take action. He secretly activated his petrification martial spirit and his body turned dark brown. Silently, Shi Yan blended his Yin power and profound qi, producing 3. Controlled by his will, the 3 fields gradually separated. He had seen Bai Ming's teleport martial spirit and he knew it was a fierce martial spirit through Hanzhong. The 3 were prepared as a counter for the teleport martial spirit. "Don't blame me since you seek your death yourself." Bai Mingsu raised his left hand as he got within 10 meters of Shi Yan. Blue polar ice flame appeared in his palm. As he threw out his arm, the blue flame became an ice bird which flew in the sky and left a graceful blue trail. That ice bird was so vivid that even the feathers on its head could be clearly seen. It was breathing blue flames from its mouth on its ice-cold face. Bai Mingsu looked on coldly with contempt in his eyes. For him, it wasn't too much effort to kill Shi Yan. Just as the ice bird flew near him, a cold light flashed across Shi Yan's eyes. A huge green light ball filled with dense Yin qi suddenly shot out from his chest, and it was intertwined with electricity and Yin power. Boom! The green light ball struck the ice bird and gave off thunder. Dazzling blue and green light exploded like fireworks while the green light ball and the ice bird cracked at the same time, turning into blue and green light spots. Bai Mingsu frowned in surprise and nodded slowly while gazing at Shi Yan. "Good. You really are something to kill a Mojang." After saying that, Bai Mingsu's face turned rigid. More and more polar ice flame was produced by him. He looked like a bunch of ice flames, with blue flames gushing out of his body towards Shi Yan from all directions. A biting cold came from those ice thorns as they approached. Standing there, Shi Yan felt as if the space surrounding him was frozen solid. In the cold air, his profound qi circulated slower. When the cold air came into contact with his skin, his bones and veins were nearly frozen. At that moment, a warm stream suddenly flew out from his blood and bones. His body was defending against the cold automatically. The immortal martial spirit. Shi Yan's eyes lit up as he was secretly delighted. The warm stream went through his whole body like lightning. The next moment, he had gotten rid of the coldness. That happened in just a minute, and the thousands of ice thorns were merely an inch away from him. Yin wall. A green shield appeared beside him which was made of Yin power, dazzling and horrifying. The Yin wall was like a huge upside-down bowl which protected him. The Yin wall was so thin and transparent that Shiryen could see things 10 meters away clearly. Although there was a mere mortal-level martial skill, it could absorb Yin Qi and turn it into Yin swirls and Yin pearls. There was a martial skill which utilized Yin Qi. With the help of the Yin swirls and Yin pearls, Shiryen could make Yin Qi into all sorts of defensive weapons. Once the Yin pearls were alive, he would have endless Yin Qi. The Yin wall was refined from Yin Qi. Just as triggering the once getting hang of the Shiryen found it could produce all sorts of defensive methods. This seemed to bring him endless surprises. Boo! Boo! The thorns thrust towards him and landed on the dazzling green Yin wall, and their power was absorbed in an instant. Baiming's polar ice flame martial spirit couldn't freeze the Yin wall, let alone damage Shiryen who was under it. Shiryen hadn't even triggered his negative energy. The Yin wall triggered by Yin pearl seemed to control the polar ice flame martial spirit. Nonetheless, he still felt that the Yin Qi light spots were decreasing quickly. The power of the could only be strengthened by Yin Qi. The Yin power used for his Yin wall could be consumed and not produced. Without Yin Qi, the Yin power from the Yin pearls wouldn't increase. But this time, Shiryen had absorbed all the Yin Qi in the Yin Field and formed 6 Yin pearls inside himself, which would let him play with Baiming for a long time. Icy thorns thrust on the green wall and the cold air permeated into it, but this was soon digested by the Yin power within. Thus their battle was a deadlock from the very beginning. Baiming couldn't believe that Shiryen's green wall could bear the coldness from his polar ice flame. To him, Shiryen could only endure for a few seconds. He didn't know that Shiryen had advanced to the second sky of the human realm. Thus, he kept producing more polar ice, forming ice thorns and shooting them towards Shiryen's green shield. Shiryen had absorbed so much Yin Qi which had formed 6 powerful Yin pearls. He was not afraid of Baiming at all, even though he was at the disaster realm. Furthermore, Shiryen hadn't used his negative energy yet. Therefore, he was very willing to continue the battle with Baiming. Muyudai and Di Yalan watched the two curiously. The two girls knew how capable Baiming was. Disaster realm. Twin martial spirit. Training in the most precious martial skill of the Baiming family, Baiming was at the top of the world. Though at the first sky of the disaster realm, Baiming could even win against someone of the second sky. He would even have a shot against a third sky warrior. However, while battling with this boy from the Shur family, Baiming's polar ice flame martial spirit couldn't even break his barrier. That confused Muyudai and Di Yalan. Though Shiryen had made great impression on the two girls in the martial competition in the Godstone Square, he was merely a warrior at the third sky of the nascent realm. It had only been 2 months after the martial competition, Shiryen could reach the first sky of the human realm if he was talented. How could a human realm, first sky warrior survive against Baiming? Seeing Shiryen unmoved under Baiming's attacks, the two girls were quite surprised and looked at Shiryen with confusion in their eyes. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. Half an hour. After half an hour, the Yin wall which encircled Shiryen still could not be broken. Shiryen looked indifferent but patient, happy to continue the fight. Baiming couldn't stand it anymore. After pondering for a while, Baiming withdrew his polar ice flame and stopped his attack. He said coldly, "I can't be bothered wasting any more time with you." A strange, red and blue sword was slowly taken out by Baiming. Sky-cracking sword. Miyudai and Di Yalan took a deep breath at the same time and looked at Shiryen in pity, assuming that Shiryen was about to die for sure. The sky-cracking sword was a spirit-level weapon which previously belonged to Baiming Sheng. Baiming Sheng entered the Earth's core where there were thousands of fire hills and refined it with earth fire and polar ice for 3 years. The sky-cracking sword had 2 colors on it. One half was red and the other half blue. With the help of the sky-cracking sword, Baiming made his name in Tianyun City and never had an adversary. The sky-cracking sword was sharp, unbreakable, and had the power of earth fire and polar ice. Warriors who were touched by the sky-cracking sword would first freeze then burn. Muyudai and Di Yalan knew how vicious the sky-cracking sword was. Therefore, once the sky-cracking sword was taken out, the two girls assumed Shiryen was going to die for sure. Bai Mingsu yelled and appeared in front of Shi with the sky-cracking sword. He thrust it in the air, and it gave out red and blue light. Chi! The Yin wall was cut into 2 pieces by the sky-cracking sword. Shi was shocked. He immediately triggered his power and shuttled behind them. Meanwhile, the other 2 flew over suddenly, combining with the first one. The space Shi around was twisted a little, seeming to be squeezed and about to collapse. Standing in the invisible house-like, Shi calmed down, though his eyes grew more vicious while staring at Bai Mingsu. Shi was waiting for Bai Mingsu to trigger his teleport martial spirit again, for him to enter the. Bai Mingsu turned out to not disappoint him, as he triggered his teleport martial spirit another time. Chapter 101, Identity Exposed. Chapter 101, Identity Exposed. Bai Mingsu rushed into the field created by Yin power and profound Qi span naturally, and it could influence a warrior's body functions. As soon as Bai Mingsu broke into the field, he felt it and his expression changed. Inside the field, Bai Mingsu floated in the air and couldn't help but spin endlessly. The first few seconds his head was down, but the next moment his body curled into a ball. He couldn't even balance himself. As the creator, Shi was not influenced by the. He first observed Bai Mingsu indifferently and then began to take action at once. Boom, boom, bang, bang. Shi dashed toward Bai Mingsu like a dragon. Spreading his arms, he caught Bai Mingsu's waist and kicked him with his knees. Activating the, Shi shoved his fingers at Bai Mingsu's waist. Ding! Ding! Crisp cracking sounds came from Bai Mingsu's waist. Under his gown, Bai Mingsu wore an armor covered with scales which looked like crystal and sent out cold air. They couldn't break the crystal armor, it only left several holes on Bai Mingsu's gown. As Bai Mingsu span in the field, he was so astonished that he operated his polar ice flame martial spirit again. Suddenly, the crystal armor extended and covered his entire body. In an instant, Bai Mingsu's cheeks were covered with that scaled crystal armor. This armor was a secret defensive weapon and matched Bai Mingsu's polar ice flame martial spirit. Under the effect's polar ice flame martial spirit, a massive amount cold air went into the armor and activated it, for there was an icy air pouring out from it. Shi could not break Bai Mingsu's armor, but they were permeated by his cold air and became more and more stiff. Stuck in the, Bai Mingsu was still spinning swiftly. He couldn't stay still and was attacked by Shi. However, under the protection of that crystal armor, Bai Mingsu had no worries at all. He was waiting for a chance to fight back. No! Cold light sparkled in Shi eyes as he took a deep breath and finally operated the negative energy to trigger. A brutal, bloodthirsty emotion broke out in his body. Looking rigid, Shi was now surrounded by white smoke. Di Yalin's body quivered a little as she looked at Shi in surprise and screamed, "Ding Yan!" Muyudai's face shifted a little. As she cast her eyes on Shi, her facial expression became complicated. Once Shi activated, his negative energy spewed out and turned into a dense smoke, covering him with a bloodthirsty, brutal, and crazy air. After a glance at this vicious scene, Di Yalin and Muyudai realized that this boy from the Shi family was exactly Ding Yan. How can it be? Muyudai shook her head heavily with a complicated face and mumbled, "That's impossible. It must be wrong. They look different, and that Ding Yan was a mere unknown warrior. How could he be the young master of the Shi family? It's impossible." Muyudai couldn't believe it, nor did she want to believe it. Shi is Ding Yan. Di Yalin and Shi were intimate before, so she intimately knew about Shi. No matter how Shi face changed, he was definitely the same person when he operated. Standing there dumbstruck, Muyudai gazed at Shi and mixed feelings came to her mind. Di Yalin's eyes sparkled and her breasts were floating with her short breaths. Looking at Shi, she suddenly began to worry about him, as she said to Muyudai, "Xiao Dai, Bai Mingsu is fighting with Ding Yan. How can it be like this? I don't want either of them to be hurt." Muyudai took a deep breath, calmed down, and shook her head. "Do you think you can stop them?" Di Yalin was surprised, but she still said, "We need to try." "You don't know Bai Mingsu." Muyudai sighed. He would get anything he wants at any expense. And Ding Yan talked wildly. Bai Ming-su won't spare him. Even if Ding Yan is the young master of the Shi family, he can't compete with Bai Ming-su. The Bai Ming family is more powerful than the Shi family. No, I'm going to stop them. Di Yalin looked determined and screamed, Ding Yan, stop it. Young Master Bai Ming, stop. Shi Yan could hear Di Yalin scream clearly, though he didn't make a response. Wisps of negative energy were generated in his meridians and Shi Yan's power surged. He suddenly triggered the N7 marks appeared and struck Bai Ming-su. Bang, 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 bang. Bai Ming-su was struck 7 times in succession and was knocked out of the Bai Shi Yan and flew 50 meters away. Puh! Bai Ming-su spewed out a mouthful of blood and the bones in his chest were broken. That crystal armor dimmed and couldn't defend against Shi Yan's. After falling to the ground, Bai Ming-su stood up quickly with a pale face and blood on the corner of his mouth. Ding Yan! Di Yalin suddenly screamed, stop it. You two stop it. Bai Ming-su stood up with a hideous face and carried his sky-cracking sword. After wiping the blood on his face, he viciously stared at Shi Yan. Shi Yan, I will kill you and smash your Shi family. You. Shi Yan scorned in a rage and licked his lips. Who do you think you are? Ding Yan! Di Yalin screamed again. Muyudai began to worry as she remarked, Ding Yan, you know the Bai Ming family's strength. There's no point making an enemy of Bai Ming-su. Shi Yan took a breath and turned to glance at the 2 girls indifferently. I don't know you. Then, he walked to Bai Ming-su step by step. Every step he made, the space around him twisted. As he was moving, there was radiating out a suppressing power. As long as he was within the, Shi Yan didn't need to worry about Bai Ming-su's teleport martial spirit, and he was confident that he could torture Bai Ming-su slowly in the field. Bai Ming-su finally learned something. Seeing Shi Yan coming near, Bai Ming-su's face turned cold. Instead of using his teleport martial spirit, he sat down where he stood. The sky-cracking sword rushed out. In the dazzling red and blue light, the sky-cracking sword fell right upon Shi Yan's head. Boom! The sword fell into the field and there came a strange sound. The red and blue sword shot out bluntly. Inside the field, the sword thorns were flying everywhere with its sharp murderous power. Z. Sword wounds appeared on Shi Yan's body. The sword thorns from the sky-cracking sword were extremely sharp and like Mu Hui's, they broke through Shi Yan's petrification martial spirit. Spirit-level weapon. Extraordinary. Shi Yan was shocked, then moved out from the field while covered in blood, feeling hot pain on his body. Dozens of sword wounds were left on Shi Yan by Bai Ming's sky-cracking sword, every one of which was an inch deep. Teleport. Bai Ming's suddenly appeared beside Shi Yan as he injected his polar ice flame martial spirit into his fist and punched Shi Yan in the back. Boom! Shi Yan dashed forward about 10 meters and spewed out a mouthful blood. Before he managed to stabilize himself, Shi Yan operated his Yin power and swiftly created a new Yin wall. As soon as the Yin wall was formed, Shi Yan found that Bai Ming-su was already in front of him and was staring at him with the polar ice flame in his hand. If it had not been for Shi Yan refining the Yin wall at his fastest speed, Bai Ming-su would have frozen him using his polar ice flame and blasted him into pieces. Back! Bai Ming-su yelled, stretched out his hand, and watched as the sky-cracking sword flew back into his hand like lightning. Carrying the sky-cracking sword, Bai Ming-su smirked cunningly. Let me see how you will fight back. Shi Yan looked gloomy, realizing that that was only effective on living things, but not on the sky-cracking sword. If he stayed in the, Bai Ming-su could control the sky-cracking sword and attack him. If he got out of the field, Bai Ming-su could approach and attack him using his teleport martial spirit. Troublesome. Bai Ming-su possessed twin martial spirits and many secret weapons. He had the sword to attack and the armor to defend. Master Su, don't kill him. He is my friend. Di Yalin suddenly cried as she realized Shi Yan was in a bad situation. Young master, could you spare him for my sake? Muyudai hesitated and also tried to persuade him. Bai Mingsu was not moved by that, as he shook his head and said calmly, "I would usually say yes to everything you ask for. And if Shuryen hadn't showed his horrifying ability today, I would spare him. But now it's impossible. He is a human realm warrior, yet has so many secret martial skills, which threatens my life. And with him, the Shur family will have the chance to surpass my family. So he has to die." After the speech, Bai Mingsi didn't hesitate anymore and projected his sword toward Shuryan's head directly. The sky-cracking sword flew like a shooting star with 10-meter sword thorns trailing it. The thorns exploded and fell in all directions, blocking the space. "Ding Yen!" Di Yalan cried in a miserable voice. "Humph." Muyudai shook her head softly and pain crossed her eyes. Shuryen uttered the 6 words. Among the sword thorns, Shuryen looked determined without fear in his eyes. Under Muyudai and Di Yalan's eyes, Shuryen's right hand kept expanding while his left hand became thinner and thinner. At the same time, 2 strings of different horrible energy exploded from both his arms. Chapter 102. Nothing to do with me. Chapter 102. Nothing to do with me. Life energy was circulating in his right arm and death energy was circulating in his left. The 2 utterly different powers of life and death projected out of his left and right arms. Facing the glaring sword light of the sky-cracking sword, Shuryen, who was in the state, seemed to have incited all of the potential in his body. In the moment of life and death, his 5 senses became unprecedentedly sensitive. The circulation rate of the 2 powers in both his left and right arms was astonishingly high. The right arm swelled up and became twice as big as usual, while the left arm shriveled and shrunk twice as much as under mode. It was like a layer of skin wrapping around the bone, looking very eerie. The patterns on the 2 hands suddenly shot out bright beams of light. The 2 vast surging powers simultaneously shot out from his palms. The palms of his 2 hands separately formed 7 and 7. The yin flew out at the same time. As soon as A and O were formed, they immediately merged into one. In a mere moment, the 7 and the 7 all merged together into each other. Those formed. Boom, 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 boom. The 7 suddenly expanded multiple times. Like 7 shining door panels, they fiercely flew at the oncoming sky-cracking sword. Frightening blasts suddenly exploded and the fiery red and icy blue luster on the sky-cracking sword abruptly dimmed. An unpredictable, mysterious power suddenly rushed into the sky-cracking sword from the hum, 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 hum. The sky-cracking sword rang in the air and was blown away by the force and kept tumbling in the sky. All of its luster was lost. Bai Mingsu, who was controlling the sky-cracking sword with his mind, suddenly became as pale as a sheet. Blood dripped out of his 7 apertures, and he let out a shrill scream. The sky-cracking sword and his mind corresponded to each other. The heavy damage to the sky-cracking sword had an empathic effect on him, and together both he and the sky-cracking sword were badly injured. For those who control swords with their mind, once the sword itself gets damaged, the owner will also be heavily injured. Clink! After tumbling for a while, the sky-cracking sword finally fell to the ground 100 meters away. Its luster dimmed and it lost all its spirituality. Bai Mingsi stopped screaming. He kept using his mind to try and summon the sky-cracking sword, but he realized that the sword could not respond. Bai Mingsi was filled with horror and for the first time, his expression showed a trace of fear. After blasting out the power in Shuryen's body was depleted by a third, and he also felt quite weak. But when he saw that the sky-cracking sword lose its luster after this one hit, he felt delighted inside and his spirits rose. And when he saw that Bai Mingsi was bleeding out of his 7 apertures, he was even more thrilled. Muyudai and Di Yalan both blankly stared at Shuryen. They could not hide the surprise on their faces. Muyudai even opened her mouth wide, her little hand covering her mouth, and stopped herself from letting out a scream. Shuryen, who was only in the human realm, fought head-on and was able to blow away the spirit-level weapon, sky-cracking sword, from the disaster realm Bai Mingsu. And he was even able to destroy the spiritual connection in the sky-cracking sword. What is this? Miyudai was appalled inside. She couldn't believe her eyes. Is this really the boy from the dark forest? Miyudai suddenly realized that she didn't know Shuryen anymore. The currently arrogant Shuryen became more and more unfamiliar in her eyes, such that she didn't even know how to handle her relationship with Shuryen anymore. Ding-yen! Di Yalin exclaimed. She shouted, "What are you doing?" Miyudai jumped, and also said anxiously, Ding-yen. Don't act recklessly. Baiming Sheng is here too. If you touch the son of the Baiming family, it won't be good for you. Nor for the Shur family. Shuryen's expression was cold. He didn't say a thing and chose to ignore these two women. He bound Baimingsu using the. Baimingsu just sat there unmoving as he couldn't sense the existence of the. In his moment of carelessness, he was trapped and he couldn't escape the gravitational force of the field. This time, Shuryen also added negative energy into the. Now the field had 3 completely different forces: Yin power, profound qi, and negative energy. The 3 forces mixed together, increasing the power of the field by more than double. In the new, Baimingsu was in an extremely helpless state. The muscles on his face trembled, and within the insane whirling of the field, all the profound qi in his body was bound. Only the polar ice flame's martial spirit remained unaffected by the. It still persistently flowed into the crystal armor and firmly protected Baimingsu's body. Shuryen swiftly flew into the field. He swung up his left arm and the formed from negative energy suddenly shot out and flew towards Baimingsu's head without hesitation. Crack crack. A crisp fracturing sound came from Baimingsu's skull. The devastating deadly energy in the poured into his head and cut off his life force. Wisps of pure vital energy quickly flowed out of Baimingsu's body. Soon, Baimingsu was turned into a dried-up corpse and all of his profound qi was absorbed by Shuryen. The field disappeared in a flash. Thump! Baimingsu's corpse fell to the ground, his eyes still wide open, as if he had died with regrets. He didn't even have time to shout out threats. Once Baimingsu died, his body shrank and the crystal armor on his body was obviously a whole lot looser. Shuryen took in a deep breath and coldly stripped the crystal armor off of Baimingsu's body, bluntly placing it in his backpack. Then he didn't even look at the dazed Miyudai and Di Yalin and quickly left, also picking up the dim sky-cracking sword along the way. On Baimingsu, these 2 things were the most powerful and left the most powerful impression in his mind. Whether it was the sky-cracking sword or the crystal armor, both were extraordinary treasures. Even if Shuryen couldn't use them himself, he didn't want to let the 2 girls gain any advantages. Ding-yen, you're crazy. You're absolutely crazy. Miyudai said in a traumatized daze. She murmured, Baimingsu is like Baiming Sheng's very own life. You killed Baimingsu. That means Baiming Sheng will not only deal with you, he's going to destroy the whole Shur family. Ding-yen, you made a mistake. You really made a mistake. You're digging your own grave. Bitch. Shuryen turned his head. He gave her a cold and stern glance and said ruthlessly, if you keep blabbing, I'll kill you too. What did you say? Miyudai's expression was filled with disbelief. She raised her hand and pointed at Shuryen and shrieked, Ding-yen. I've saved your life. And this is how you treat me. Shuryen's face was full of impatience, his eyes were cold, and he swiftly moved to Miyudai's side. Smack! Shuryen's hand slapped across Miyudai's face and made her stumble back a few steps, leaving a bright red handprint on her face. Bitch! Listen up, I don't owe you anything. If you keep rattling in my ear, I will make you shut up once and for all. Shuryen coldly gazed at Miyudai, whose demeanor was a little insane. He said with a murderous look, you know how I am, I never give mercy when it comes to killing, and that includes women. Ding-yen. Di Yalin screamed, how could you hit Xiao Dai? You shut up too. Shuryen sneered and gazed at her with a cold look in his eyes. When we parted our ways in the stone woods, we broke off all relations. You have no right to talk crap about me. Don't think for a moment that there's something between us just because I fucked you. You know exactly what you gained from me. I owe you nothing. Di Yalin's delicate body shook as she looked at the ruthless Shuryen, and she could only feel as if she were in an ice cave. Both her heart and her body were frozen solid. Di Yalin tightly clenched her teeth and she tried hard not to let herself cry, but bright teardrops still appeared in the corner of her eyes. Her heart felt as if it was pierced by a sharp knife and the pain seeped into her heart. In this moment, Di Yalin finally realized how much she cared about this man. Looking at the cold expression on his face, Di Yalin finally knew what she had given up for the rest of her life. Ding Yen, you will regret this. You will definitely regret this. Muyudai covered her face and screeched hysterically, you will definitely regret this. You and the Shi family will all be destroyed by Bai Mingsheng. Smack! Shi Yan was just about to leave, but he turned around and gave another slap to Muyudai's face. His expression was dark and he said in scorn, bitch. You think that once you sought refuge in the Baiming family, Bai Mingsheng was going to take revenge for you? You're joking. Bai Mingsheng is a fierce and ambitious man. You think he was going to fight to the death with the Dark World for a woman? Do you know why the people of the Dark World are here? Do you know what fate you'll be facing once you walk out of here? Miyudai's pretty face turned pale and her eyes were filled with desperation. Finally, she made no more sound. She already guessed this possibility, but refused to admit it. Now that Shi Yan mercilessly said it out loud, Miyudai finally couldn't ignore her speculation anymore. She felt cold from head to toe, and felt as if all the hard work she put in was just an illusion. From now on, you both have nothing to do with me. Shi Yan heartlessly glanced at the two girls for the last time, and turned around to walk towards the pit. He said coldly with his back facing the girls, don't get in my way, or else you'll share the same fate as Bai Mingsu. Then, Shi Yan slowly walked towards the pit. Di Yalin's face was filled with tears and her limbs were frozen, as if the life force in her body was all taken out. Her heart felt as if it was ripped to pieces. The pain pierced through her heart. Miyudai's pretty face had a red handprint on it. Her face was full of desperation, and it looked like her life force was also cut off. She stared aimlessly into the sky as if she didn't know where to go from here. She had lost her way. Xiao Daiwi, we've really made a mistake. Di Yalin's voice choked as she covered her face and quietly sobbed. Woo! Muyudai couldn't hold it in anymore. She finally covered her face and cried. She cried in the most heartbreaking of ways, as if she wanted to cry out all the sadness in her heart. Shi Yan stood at where the pit was, his expression cold, as if he didn't hear the weeping of the two girls at all. He only furrowed his brows and looked forward. Lube-dub, lube-dub, lube-dub. The Yin pearls in the Shen K, Tian K, and Yin Du meridians pulsed even more merrily. After coming here, the Yin pearls had been extremely active. Looking at the floating, glistening crystal, Shi Yan realized this was what was summoning the Yin pearls. The mysterious power coming out of the crystal must have been resonating with the Yin pearls at a distance. The two sides seemed to have some sort of mysterious connection. However, standing outside the pit, Shi Yan didn't know where to start. He had no idea how to get his hands on the crystal. He pondered for a moment, then tried to stir the Yin swirls, forming Yin Qi in his palm. The Yin Qi slowly gathered and flew out of Shi Yan's palm, forming into a giant hand made of dark green light which grabbed at that crystal from far away. Wisps of strange Yin power were released from the 6 Yin pearls. The Yin power was like invisible strands of thread that seemed to also flow into the crystal. The dark glowing green hand slowly pressed down and steadily landed on the light shield of the crystal. Pop! Suddenly a slit cracked open in the light shield. The barrier that kept defying Bai Ming's polar ice flames now softened down by itself and opened up wide for Shi Yan's dark glowing hand. The crystal suddenly gave off a beautiful dazzling light and slowly floated towards that big dark glowing hand. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.